Hello everyone, and welcome to the Pancake Parlay, episode 96. I'm your host, The Don, and I'm here with Chatters. How are you today?
I'm good, Don. How are you?
I'm good. Today we are a podcast that talks about movies, TV shows, games, and all general pop culture every single week. So today we're going to be talking about a lot of different stuff. I guess dealing with the crisis that we have at hand, and obviously we're not going to be talking about what it is per se because of YouTube censorship. Well, let's just call it crisis, and I think I think it's a pretty good understanding of what we're talking about. So
I think everybody at the moment is kind of dealing with the global crisis at the moment at hand. But I think at the moment, with a lot of YouTube channels being like labeled as either unfriendly in terms of like advertisers or marked as demonetized. Like we're not really monetized on this channel as it is, but there is even like some of the YouTube people that I'm subscribed to, I've had like issues with those channels like not coming up on my YouTube feed, primarily because they are talking about the current crisis that's happening around the world, and because they're doing that, they're not coming up on my feed, and I don't see them. Like I didn't even. But yeah, it's kind of clear that at least with YouTube's algorithm, and I think even Susan was Wojcicki and Google in general, they posted up a thing about how a lot of there's going to be a lot more automated kind of reviewing of videos, which will mean that naturally a lot of videos will be marked as not viewable or watchable. It's dealing with sensitive topic, right? So at least for now, we're sorry if it is kind of awkward hearing us refer to the crisis that as the crisis, but we're kind of to protect the channel as it is. But I guess our first news story regards is how it's impacting the Hollywood industry and TV. So obviously you've heard production has been kind of either cancelled or either James Bond has been delayed. The Witcher 2 halted its productions in the UK.
Even something like a new stuff coming in, like I think the Lord of the Rings TV show was filming New Zealand that got delayed, as well as even like Wheel of Time, now the fantasy thing that's also from Amazon that's also has been delayed production basically. So everything is basically being delayed.
For the most part, but subsequently this has kind of led to the US box office having its worst weekend in 20 years, right? Like that's kind of insane that it's like we've been on such a upward spiral, like like a back-to-back increase in sales,
especially if you think about like I guess like the prices of like tickets haven't really gone down. If anything, they've gone up.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think that's what a lot of these kind of numbers are being inflated. And when they do kind of like movies and how well they do, they always do like accounting for inflation, right? So certain movies that make $1 billion today, impressive as it being making $1 billion like a decade ago. But yeah, it is kind of insane, like because of the current incidents happening around the world. That it's affecting the US box office that significantly, and it kind of makes sense because in America at the moment, a lot of US movie theaters like AMC and Regal, they're closing due to the issues that are happening. Yeah, the crisis. I almost said it.
See, that's how easy it is.
And yeah, and AMC have said that they plan to shut down all theaters for 6 to 12 weeks. Now, obviously, like I think at the moment that's kind of the base point that they've been told that okay, it might take up to three months or so before things might get back to normal. But I think realistically, if everybody kind of follows and does everything supposed to, things will get back to normal much more earlier than that. The problem is not a lot of people are listening, so that's what this is kind of factoring into in terms of whether or not what industries suffer and why they are planning for things to take up to like 3 months, 6 months potentially. Like a lot of people are saying like things will get back to normal in June. I don't think it's going to be as bad, but I think there is obviously a a good reason to prepare. There's nothing wrong with preparing for things potentially getting worse. But a good outcome of all this is that I don't know if you've heard, like a lot of movies are going instead of coming onto the big screen because nobody's going and watching movies. They're actually coming straight to streaming ahead of schedule, so people can watch certain movies or TV shows at home more faster. For example, I think Frozen 2 is coming, onto the Disney Plus streaming service 3 months ahead of schedule.
Yeah,
Universal.
there's that. I think I heard like Rise of Skywalker. That Star Wars
Yep.
film that's also getting early release. So it's like so far, I think Disney's basically saying that quite a lot because I think there's also been news for Disney in general. Because like their stock's tanking, obviously.
Oh yeah.
And then obviously they can't open the parks. So then
Yeah, they've closed down.
there's talks about like Apple buying them as well. So there's a lot of stuff like that going on. So
Yeah,
maybe
you
like
see,
this is a good face for them.
well, you see, at the moment with the whole Apple thing, it seems to all be rumor. Like, there's nothing like seems to be very substantive about it, other than people like hypothetically saying that Apple could buy Disney. So I'm holding my breath until I say. Also, I can't see the US kind of allowing for it. It's going to be one of the like monopolization laws will come into effect and be like, we can't let you guys kind of take over that much because you'd be controlling way too much of the media landscape. But the whole Disney thing is definitely true. Like I know someone who went to Orlando to do work for Disney, but because all the shutdowns and stuff, they've had to so they were supposed to be there till June. Now that's all been cancelled and they are on their way back from Orlando to Australia. So yeah, it's definitely affected a lot of kind of ability to go about like the normal schedule, right? But now another company that's also kind of releasing a bunch of movies early and through streaming is Universal. Now they're allowing for The Hunt, which is like a I guess I don't know how to really describe it.
It was like it was supposed to come out like a few months ago, and it was like supposed to be this controversial film. Like it kind of looks like a medium tier film that I kind of like those films. But yeah, there was kind of like a medium tier thing of like hunting conservatives possibly, but like slanted on its side where it's like a I guess death game basically. That got I guess is going to streaming.
Yeah, that is The Invisible Man.
Yep, I've heard good praise with that film as well. I've been meaning to watch it, but I guess it's coming digitally, so.
Yeah, well, you see, that's the thing with the sorry, I was gonna say the digital man instead of visible. But with the Invisible Man, like I was a bit, I don't know, apprehensive watching it, I guess. But like all these like reviews coming out, they're like, hey, it's not that bad. I'm like, all right. I feel like the movie kind of has like a potentially small budget as well, since it's not having like a. Do you remember the movie Hollow Man?
Yes, I do.
Hollow Man kind of had like this this 3D effect on the invisible guy, right? But they don't even need to do that in the movie because the guy's just going to be mostly invisible. But there's that, and there's also Trolls World Tour. Now, I forget what movie it was, but I saw the trailer to this movie, and it looks completely awful. But it's kind of designed to be aimed at like a young demographic. But originally this particular movie was supposed to have a kind of streaming and theater release at the same time. So now it's just kind of completely went towards we're just doing the digital. And it makes sense because you're gonna have a lot of kids at home now. What are they gonna do? They're gonna watch they're
going to compete against Frozen 2, but I heard that's a dark film apparently.
I
haven't watched it, but I've heard.
I've watched it.
I haven't watched
it's
it,
not
but I
that
heard
good.
one thing happens, and it was like, wow, that's actually pretty dark.
I think I know what it is, but it's kind of lame. Like I guess it's dark for like a Disney. Yeah, I get. Well, do you want me to spoil it? Okay,
I'd rather
okay.
not. I'd rather experience it for
Well,
the
you
first time at some point.
but it's not even worth
No,
it. Like
no,
Frozen 2
no,
is
no,
a
no, 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 no.
I'm not gonna spoil it, but I'm just saying like Frozen 2 is a vastly inferior movie to Frozen, and I don't even like Frozen that much.
It's like you just know.
Well, I'm more of a Tangled guy myself. Although I don't watch the TV. There's like an animated show apparently.
Yeah, no, they used to do that for a lot of stuff because I remember in the '90s there used to be like '90s TV show
Aladdin,
version of like Aladdin. There was also Hercules as well.
Hercules, that was dope. There was like a Timon and Pumbaa animated series that I have like a video of, like on a cassette, on a VHS. So very old school. Harley Quinn, I think, is also coming and streaming digitally as well. Probably through, I'm guessing through, what is it, the DC Universe app
The
or whatever it may
CEU
be.
app slash now
Yeah,
HBO
whatever you
Max
wanna.
or whatever the hell we're doing with that. But
Yeah,
yeah,
so
but
like
yeah, it's even other things like even like what is it like that Vin Diesel movie Bloodshot or whatever is basically getting
oh,
released
the
next
one,
week.
oh, the one that's based around his Dungeons and Dragons character.
But it's is it really? Because like I heard
Yeah,
news
it
reports of
is.
that, but it's based off a comic book, the Valiant comic books. So I don't even know.
Well, I've heard
Maybe he has
it's
like
like a witch hunter,
like little
right?
small things like about it. Maybe is
It's like a
about it.
witch hunter, right? That's what the I have
I
no
have
idea.
no idea. I thought it was like a vampire. That's why it's called Bloodshot. But I have no idea.
I don't know. Who knows? But one particular thing that with the whole crisis and that's happening, one particular thing that's been pointed out is according to Nielsen, which is the rating system in the US, staying at home actually drives up TV viewing by 60% and potentially more. So there is going to be a big drive at the moment with people looking at content online and viewing things online. So a lot of these streaming platforms, now's a good time to be a streaming platform, right? It's kind of good that Disney, Netflix, Amazon, who else? Like, is Hulu one? No, Hulu's Amazon, right? So like all these companies have developed this infrastructure that they're now going to be more or less hopefully taking advantage because now everybody's going to be at home. Because they're kind of staying in self-isolation and practicing social distance, right? And I think that's like, I mean, that's been the case with me. Like, although I don't really watch TV, I do consume a lot of my content online. And one particular thing that you can do, I don't know, have you heard of what a Netflix party is?
No.
Okay, so Netflix party is something that's kind of come about because of all the global crisis at the moment. It's essentially a Google Chrome extension that allows you to watch TV shows and movies together with your friends. So you can watch, the I don't know, I'm just going to say The Witcher, but you can watch The Witcher with your friends, and you can chat. There'll be like a chat window on the side, and you can talk to them while you're watching the show at the same time. So I kind of find that to be a really awesome thing that you can use at the moment, since we are, at the same time you can do something Discord or Skype or something, and then watch a show together. But doing this through the application seems like a really effective way to kind of come together during a time when everybody's supposed to be. So I really kind of like that. So
Yeah, that it
you know,
is kind of cool because like I remember everyone talking about like it is kind of cool to at least experience everything together, and I feel like that's kind of like a semi feature for certain things, but it's always like a back feature that no one really uses. But I think it's really cool to have something playing at the exact same time, and you could be further away, instead of
mm.
and it kind of keeps that experience. Like I do, yeah. And I think it's just pretty awesome to have a feature like that, and even like to chat. I think it's like it just kind of brings people together. Not in I guess movie experience, but it's probably the next best
Well,
thing you can get.
it's kind of weird, right? Because like it is kind of weird. Movies are technically a social event that you do, even though most of the time when you watch a movie, everybody is quiet and shuts the fuck up. Like I know in America, like people are far more like,
Yeah, trust me. I've been to movie theaters in America,
yeah,
and yeah, they yell. They're the ones doing the
they
quippy one
laugh, like,
liners and stuff like that.
yeah,
And then like
but
Australia is very like, nah, man, we're not tolerating any of that.
yeah, exactly. I mean, even when I went to cinemas in Canada, it wasn't that either. But although I was quite young, and I watched Pokemon, the first movie there. But and I made all my family. so we all got Ancient Mute cards. It was very,
Yeah.
but with the yeah, so that's an option for people if you want to do something more positive, or interact with people during this time. It's kind of like it's kind of like essentially it's kind of like Twitch, right? In a lot of the ways, it's like you play something, everybody watches it. When I watch movies with friends and family, like at their houses and stuff, like most of the time you're just screwing around and talking or making fun of whatever you're watching. Like I watched the Dumb Doom movie that came out, and yeah, we were all just kind of laughing and making comments about how bad it is. Like I could imagine that being with the Netflix party extension, but just like taking it to a level where you don't have to play with each other, and it's a good thing. But on top of that, on the downside, Netflix at the moment is reducing video quality across the EU at the moment due to the crisis. So although it's only happening for a month at the moment, there is going to be like I think just due to the sheer amount of bandwidth that's going to be utilized because people are going to be staying home, they're going to be reducing the kind of quality that you have to. You're not going to be able to watch out of
Well, you wouldn't be able to
the
watch
things
like
at 4K.
everything in 4K or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to watch Stranger Things at 4K, which I think honestly it's kind of like a good thing.
Yeah,
So I
it's
don't
like
think
it's like you'd rather not crash everything, and just make everything run smoothly,
Yeah, just so you can see like the pores on people's face, which already look very weird, and I don't like it. But yeah, I think like they've even said like, over here that asking for streaming quality to downgrade the video quality to standard definition when HD is not necessary. So that's the kind of state it is. So obviously, it sucks, but it's done to kind of help everybody to have access to internet and bandwidth over in the EU at the moment. But that's kind of just showing like rippling effect that is happening around the world when it comes to access of essentially like entertainment goods, right? Because at the same time, because of the current crisis, gaming usage has gone up by 75%, according to Verizon. So a lot of people are kind of playing video games more often. Apparently, like during peak hours, it's up by 12% as well. So people are kind of using their time to self-isolate to play games, whether it be like video games or phone games. Obviously, I think you and I are kind of like a little bit of like this, just like, oh well, when we think gaming, it's you're playing on your Xbox or you're playing on your PC, but
Yeah,
there's
but
going to
it
be a
could be
lot of
like
more
mobile games or
yeah
anything like that,
yeah, your Candy Crushes and stuff. But I think there is a lot of people who are now just like, well, now it's a good time for me to play that game that I've been putting off for a long time.
Well, this is like a perfect time for any like RPG because you just jump in and be like, I've got so much time to kill, and just really just
Exactly,
delve in.
right?
Like imagine if this is like your first time ever like playing like at like Skyrim or something. You would
Yeah.
have all the free time that you need to.
Exactly, and that's the thing. I think gamers obviously know that, and it will be interesting to see because I think like we're going to be getting a lot more statistics coming out, whether it be like throughout these coming months or towards the end of the crisis. Where a lot of game companies will be saying like, oh, we had X million active players during this period. There's going to be a lot of what is it, stats coming out about like porn websites and stuff talking about how many people have been on that during the break. It's going to be very, very interesting to see the consequences of being indoors and self-isolating during this. I definitely have been playing games here and there, but now I have even more time, so I can probably finally finish Breath of the Wild and give a proper review. I just have to beat Ganon, but I'm just being really lazy about just kind of sitting down and playing it. That's just always,
That's what happens when you get big games like that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, especially towards the end. But yeah, like that's it's always good. To play games, and there's been Doom and what is it, Animal Crossing came out, so I know a few people who've kind of jumped to get that, but there's been a shift towards not getting the physical copies and getting the digital copies, which is kind of bad for another company that's kind of slowly dying over time, which is GameStop. So they recently mentioned how they have claimed that they are a form of essential retail, and will be remaining open during this time of crisis in America at the moment, much to everybody's chagrin, because they think it's fucking stupid and GameStop isn't a essential form of retail.
Gaming is essential. Like,
look, gaming is essential. Don't get me.
But it's like, yeah, but like GameStop itself, like, yeah, and it's like holy crap, like, like, sure, they had good news, like, probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago. They're just like, yeah, we're gonna hire Reggie from Fils-Aimé from like Nintendo of America. That's cool. But then they've also got bad press like this, being like, oh yeah, well, we're gonna keep staying open because we need profits, And it's
exactly.
like it's just like a really sad state of affairs, because like, obviously, if it's like, we do live in a time where you can literally buy anything digital. Even there was even some news of, I think, like Final Fantasy VII. I swear to God, when they released the news, I'm like, okay, they're delaying it like for another month or whatever. We're never gonna get this game. They're just like, oh, it's still coming out like next month. Just that physical copies will be hard to come by. And it's like, yeah, okay, that's fine. But it's like, man, like, GameStop to do this is just like, I feel like this is the problem with a lot of things. So I don't know about you, but for this crisis, there's a lot of people sending, companies sending emails about like, this is what we're doing, yada yada yada. And I feel like if you're the company that doesn't do it / goes against it, obviously something like this will happen, and then people will just like point you out,
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, right? Like, obviously, we can kind of understand that, yeah, like, businesses, are still owned by people, and they still need to try and like hire their employees and spend it and try and make a profit. Like, the problem is, I think, like, especially in America, there's a lot of places that are shutting down, and having, especially, like, look, no offense, but like, gamers, we can be pretty unhygienic. Like, not myself, not you, Don, but like, there are people at conventions that are disgusting. There's people at game stores that aren't like, super hygienic. And look, I love you all, but like, it can be a bit of like a hotbed for people transferring.
You go to any convention,
unwanted.
There's always that funk.
Oh God, it's awful, right? Like, when we change like that, I change my mind. But the thing is, like, ultimately, these kind of retail stores are mostly like an optional hobby kind of thing that you can kind of go without. But like you said, it's all about profit, and they have shareholders that they need to report to. And so if they go out of business, fuck the people that we're employing. We're going to put them at risk of catching the virus and the particular crisis that we're dealing with. So, but yeah, like, it's one of those things where hopefully they will change their tune. But I think ultimately, we actually talked about it. Maybe was it last week or maybe the week before? But we were talking about how, GameStop is kind of coming to a close. I feel like hiring Reggie is like a little bit of like a last minute desperation.
They're just like, oh, gamers like him. Okay, please tell us like your magic, what you did with the Nintendo. Like, please tell us, like, is there a way to like convert people over, or like, because the whole thing of like what GameStop has to do, it's not about buying and trading games really. Like, that majority of their money and profit comes from trading games and getting stuff secondhand and reselling it at a higher price. But it's like,
exactly.
But on top of that, they're going to be like, okay, then what, like, that's why they have all these like loyalty programs and all these types of things coming into place, because they need some sort of perks. They need you to stay loyal to the brand, or like, the store, because it's like, okay, what can we give you that other people can't give you? And that's why you've seen them in recent years to be like, we have this exclusive collector's edition, or like, we have all these little trade-in type of things, and it's like, it's still, in the end, a lot of people will go majority of the time with the price over loyalty, especially for a product like, for example, if you're buying like the new Halo game, like it's like, no matter where you buy, you probably want to get the best, as in the best price for it, because the product is still the exact same.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, even when we're not talking about like general video games, if you're gonna buy like a loaf of bread, you're gonna buy it for $1 rather than $1.50. And if I could digitally print my own bread at home for 50 cents, fuck yeah, I'd do that, right? Like, you wouldn't download a car? Yes, I would if I could. All right. And that's what I'm saying. Like, with how the markets are at the moment, like it's kind of showing that brick and mortar stores for things that are digital now is kind of going to go of the way of the dinosaur. Is just because of the way that GameStop functions. They kind of need to have their industry the way it is. Like from what I understand, like one of the things that in America that they do is like, if you not here in Australia, because we have it under EB Game, and but actually I'm not too sure if they do the same thing, but like in America they will also ask if you want to like trade in your phone as well. So like things that aren't video games, because they're obviously desperate to try and turn a profit in like different ways. So yeah, that's the kind of state of things. But hopefully, like they'll change their mind and think about their employees more. So
Because it's so essential,
so essential. So another piece of pretty interesting news, and I've kind of been involving myself in this as well, is so in order to prepare for the coming crisis, or the current crisis, so to speak.
Crisis on Infinite Earth X.
The crisis on Infinite Earths, yeah. You can actually help if you have an NVIDIA graphics card. Now, so NVIDIA has this particular kind of software. It's called folding at home. So folding with the kind of at symbol, the A with the squiggly circle around it, folding at home. So what it essentially is a program that allows you to kind of share some of your GPU clock cycles and combine it with a bunch of other kind of people who are also kind of donating and dedicating their GPU like usage in order to kind of form like a big global network to kind of look at solutions and I guess vaccine development for certain diseases and stuff. So at the moment, the program I think has it for like a few things such as like Parkinson's disease and cancers and stuff. But I think eventually they're going to extra segment to help develop things for the big crisis at the moment. So it's something really cool that I would recommend people kind of having a look at, because it's something that you can kind of do passively in the background, and it's not going to consume a lot of like RAM and stuff. So I've been kind of using it. They like I said, they haven't anything for the current crisis at the moment, but you can help with other things such as like cancer and Parkinson's. So I highly recommend having a look at folding at home.
Yeah, I'll
And
definitely have a look, because I didn't even know anything about it.
Yeah, I didn't know about it either until the what is it, Tech Radar, because essentially, like people, it's been something that's actually been around for a while, and yeah, really. Well, for me, it hasn't. Maybe if you haven't got like a powerful PC or something like that, like it might be like it might chug a little bit. But for my current computer, which is like kind of like a mid-range build at the moment, it hasn't had any like stuttering or anything at the moment. So it's something really cool to kind of help like scientists like around the world to help in the development of cures and vaccines and stuff. Because for example, like they'll like kind of do simulations of certain proteins and shapes in order to try and find structures that might help in the development vaccine stuff, like potentially. So it's something to have a look at. They'll probably be updating it, in the next couple of days or weeks in order to help with the so-called crisis at the moment. So I thought it's something. Again, it's something that gamers can kind of come together and save the as we
Did
should
someone
always
say
be.
gamers rise up?
Yeah, as the heroes we truly are. But speaking of gamers, they've recently released the hardware specs for the Xbox Series One and the PS5, like almost kind of like back to back. Like the PlayStation came out like I think like yesterday, and the Xbox came out like 3 days. So in like the 16th on our end, so maybe like the 17th in the US. Yeah, at the moment, like there's a lot of kind of oh hey, it's like 20 quadrillion gigaflops and
It's
stuff
all
like
about
that.
that
Like,
teraflops now. Everyone
yeah,
is now a teraflop,
expert.
expert in the past like 2 years since teraflop started to come out of the
Yeah.
terminology.
But I think kind of the big picture that's kind of happening in this generation is there is like a big move towards kind of decreasing the effects of like you know like not necessarily lag but like loading and even to the point that and also kind of a return to memory. I don't know if you've seen how both Xbox and Sony are introducing like external memory that you can introduce. With Xbox, I think you have to use like a proprietary SSD, so an SSD being a solid state drive. Whereas for Sony, you can use like third-party SSDs to introduce into their system. So it's kind of interesting. Like again, like there is that whole argument about like keeping things free or open for people to kind of introduce themselves, or whether you have it within to like an Apple way of developing because they have everything with it, right? I
Well,
think
yeah,
also.
because I find it very interesting as well. But like, it also depends because since this is like different technology, and yeah, I feel like what they're doing with this gen, it seems that they want this to last like quite a long time, if not
Mhm.
a continuation type of thing. And they're having like expandable memory is something very interesting that like you can add these on top to make not only loading quicker but like it's very optional because that would make and not, as you're saying propriety. I feel like it's obviously probably something got to do with the architecture in the sense of like
Mhm.
because like the problem with developing with PC is that everyone has a different setup, and then it's so hard to
Yeah.
kind of like make sure everyone has the right optimal performance. So trying to
Mhm.
get that into a console is very hard. So I am assuming to have some sort of propriety like SSD is for purely because like if someone puts like something else in there, it can completely like, destroy something, and like obviously that's a worst case scenario thing. So it's obviously depending on how everything's built, of course, but I do find
Yeah.
it, how the specs are interesting now. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's all about like communication. You know, it's going to be able to kind of communicate and keep data in a form that's going to be efficiently used with the system itself. It's just very funny that like we've got like that you've got these kind of like again, so Microsoft partnered with Seagate for their proprietary external 1 terabyte SSD expansion slot, and it's like this kind of it's like a small device that kind of fits in your hand, right? Like a like it's like on your in your palm that you can wrap your hand around. So it's very small. And that's and that's like their SSD memory card. So it's very interesting. We have kind of gone back in a way, but it's like obviously for like a good reason. But it is very funny. Like I remember, my friend who had my cousin who had a memory card, but like because it was full, I was playing like a good like solid like couple of hours of like I think Final Fantasy X, and I beat like this like really big boss and stuff like that, and it's like, oh, by the way, like we don't have like enough space on the memory, so they couldn't save any of the progress. That I was so fucking mad. But it is funny to see.
I remember that as well because I remember the struggles of like I'd play a game, and then obviously when it comes to a save point or something, it's like, oh, you have no memory, please delete. And obviously, if you need, you can't delete stuff. You have to reset the whole thing and then delete stuff. So I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah,
And I do
yeah,
remember this one
exactly.
time. I think I was playing like Dark Cloud or Dark Cloud is the no, it's called Dark Chronicle, which is the sequel to
Okay,
Dark Cloud. Um, and
okay.
I remember I was like 2 hours in, and I remember calling
Hmm.
my mom. I'm like, okay, you need to buy a memory card and just get it so I can get, because like I'm like I can't move and I can't reset the console. Like you have to get it. That's all. That's the
Yeah,
only way.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, like it's one of those things that's very funny to see that like we kind of have to go old school in order. It's like old solutions to modern problems, right? And yeah, it's very interesting to also see that SSDs are so tiny now, because I don't know, like the SSD, although it's probably very different SSDs like in a computer or something, but even like on an external hard drive, like it seems those used to be like kind of like a bit bulky, but now we're able to put it in like a small format in your hand. It's very, very cool. But yeah, like I obviously I don't know too much of like the hardcore specs, like it's 40 times faster than a PS4 or something like that. But I think like they are making improvements, and they have shown like with both the Xbox and the PlayStation 5 that there is like a marketable difference in terms of getting from one loading screen to the other. Like with a lot of video games, every time you play a video game, there's like a windy hallway or path. Like most of the time, that's there in order to hide the loading screens,
Yeah,
right?
but like that's the thing. We've gotten a lot better with loading screens. Before it's just like, yeah, loading screen, and you know what it is.
Yeah, like a black screen,
and
right?
I think basically, like I'd say probably Naughty Dog with like pretty much Uncharted started doing that, where it's like they cover loading screens with crawling through cracks really slowly, or like I remember Metroid Prime, they used to have these like doors, and to get those doors to open you had to like shoot it a bunch of times and that's basically masking the loading screen. So it's like we've gotten better at doing that, but now we're getting to such a point, especially with these new consoles, to be like it's pretty much instantaneous, like get it, like it's straight away basically on the action. And there are some games out there now where it's like it's basically kind of like GTA 5, big load, and you're not going to be loading again basically for your game time.
Exactly.
And that's the interesting part, especially since as for example Microsoft announced for the Xbox that, because they have it already for the Xbox One, where it's like if the console's still on, it still has still has your game as in a suspended state, and it comes back. And I always find I love that feature so much, because like you don't have to reload again. So imagine, even then it doesn't, apparently with the new Xbox One X, if you turn your console off, it has multiple games suspended in multiple states. So at any time you can be like, I want to play this game, and then it'll pop up to exactly where you were. So it's kind of almost like another save state. And I feel like that to me is a lot more interesting. And then on top of that, having quick loading times will basically never be running out. Like we'll never be waiting for a game, pretty much.
And I think that's a good thing, because I think like, look, as much as I don't necessarily have a problem with having these kind of design sections that are designed to kind of mask loading screens, like I don't necessarily mind it. Like the latest one that was like very obvious to me was what is it, for the Star Wars Fallen Order, Jedi Fallen Order. Like there's a few kind of times where you have to kind of go in through cracks, or you have to go through a bunch of like maintenance pipes or something to get to an area. It's like, yeah, this is explicitly them trying to load this other side of this other area, right? Or if you're going into like a like randomly going into like a hallway to go outside, it's like, oh well, why is this hallway here? It seems kind of random. It's like, oh well, they're hiding the loading screen, that's why. It's very cool that we'll get to a point that there'll be like these back-to-back kind of action-packed games that will be designed around more real life ways of like approaching things, I guess, and it'll again make you more immersed in the video game world. So it's pretty cool. Obviously PC hasn't had to have like any kind of problems with any of that really, for the most part. Like obviously it's obviously not perfect, but the better you rig, the less problems you stuff like that. So I look forward to seeing what the next console generation will be, although I'm probably not going to be like I didn't get an Xbox One or a PS4, and I don't really feel like I missed out.
Yeah, I feel like in general, like this
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like in general, this gen wasn't as special as probably the 360, PlayStation 3 era, where there was a lot more interesting IPs that were coming out. Like this year, like this generation, there wasn't really any interesting IPs of like, oh man, this built a franchise. Like, last gen we had like under like Mass Effect, Assassin's Creed, you have Dragon Age. You had a lot of new cool IP coming out. I feel like basically this gen everything was being trailed off from last time, and I think it's also because development times and development budgets are so high nowadays that it's so hard to make an original IP/game
exactly.
and to get a success. So everything's going to be based off something that's kind of gone off. That's why I do champion games that are maybe like something different, like like for example I always champion, no matter what time, I always champion Prey. made by the
Okay.
Dishonored team. And I think I think Prey is an amazing thing. Sure, it's based off an older game, but it's completely different entirely.
Well,
Yeah.
with something like the video game industry going forward, there is a lot of like Microsoft in particular has been trying to absorb a lot of indie game developers. They acquired like Double Fine, they acquired like a bunch of different gaming companies because they're all trying to make their games under their particular like brand. Because I think I've mentioned it before that I think like all these kind of video game companies are going to eventually start introducing a streaming service eventually, right? In some component, because eventually everything's just going to be, oh, you can play this game on a Xbox, you can play this on a Stadia, you can play it on like a PlayStation, right? But like ultimately, people don't want to really double dip on buying games and stuff, so they'll just stick to one service, and that's no different to how it is on PC at the moment with something like Steam, right? Steam tried to do it with their whole like Steam box, but that kind of like failed. You don't really hear too much about that. Like even they stopped making those like weird Steam controllers that don't have like joysticks per se, but they have like these like little pads that are supposed to function like joysticks. But yeah, like they stopped selling those or something, or they're going to stop selling those. So but like the thing is like even Steam is having competition now with like the Epic Game Store, which is great. Like recently I think like Epic gave away Stanley Parable and Watch Dogs 1. They're giving away like all these free games to try and compete with the Steam market. And you look at Blizzard, they're moving their IP over there. Like they're releasing that new that new Call of Duty kind of Fortnite style game. Everybody's going to move towards like this streaming service. It's whether or not people are going to be picking Xbox or Microsoft, PlayStation, and it's going to be based on games. Like if I was going to pick a console from last year, it would probably be, from the last generation, it would probably be the PlayStation 5, just because there's a lot more exclusive games on the platform that I'm more interested in playing. Like, even though I never grew up playing any of the God of War games, like apparently God of War 4 is really good, and I like Spider-Man. There's a Spider-Man game, so I'd play that, and then there's Horizon Zero Dawn, which is coming on PC, so I'm good. That's not going to be
Yeah,
a
because
problem for me going forward.
it is very different. Because like, and not only that, but it's like, because I think I prefer Xbox has done a lot of stuff outside of that, and obviously they're building towards different experiences. Because I think like a lot of things like, because Sony, I think they get like, oh yeah, the exclusives are really good.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. They're obviously they're pretty much all single player story driven games. Whilst like I think like with Xbox they do have a lot of different variety type of stuff where it's like Forza is pretty much a better racing thing than Gran Turismo these days. Basically PlayStation doesn't have any shooters, including like third and first person shooters.
I
Whilst
guess.
like and
Yeah,
I
they
think
have like
I think that's really the difference because like I think like because because I bought all these new studios, but I always try to wrap my head around like development time and where you put your resources. So it's like for example, aside from Naughty Dog, like Horizon Zero Dawn doesn't have a multiplayer mode, whilst like Gears of War has a single player and also a multiplayer mode. So it's like if for some reason they're only focused on single player story driven things that were just a single player game, I think the development would shine. However, obviously Microsoft has their own way to do things, and that's why they probably bought all the different types of studios. Like especially I totally forgot about my one of my favorites, the RPG, the Outer Worlds guys. I'm like I'm really happy.
Obsidian Studios.
Yeah, Obsidian. No. I'm like, okay, cool. Like if we're gonna, because everyone forgets that the original Mass Effect was an exclusive on the Xbox for a very long time. I'm like, I really wish that like Microsoft probably got back into the RPG space, especially because they are trying now because we have because with the Xbox Game Pass they've also put in Kingdom Hearts, like all the Kingdom Hearts games, and then they started to put on the Yakuza games as well. Yeah, and the Yakuza games. And the Yakuza games were only exclusive on the PlayStation, so that's good.
Personally, I feel like it's all been like too late now. Like like they should have released like Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 like 3 years ago or whatever, like somewhere like before Kingdom Hearts 3 came out. Because for me, they like it's the same thing with like Metal Gear. When I had an Xbox 360, they came out with like um like Metal Gear Solid like 4 or whatever, but you couldn't play Metal Gear Solid 3. You could only play 1 and 2 or some shit like that. There's some shit, and you can't play any of the other ones because they're all on the PlayStation. And it's kind of like, well, what's the point of me playing like these random games out of order? And I think a lot of people feel like that. And they didn't, because I couldn't imagine that Kingdom Hearts 3 sold anywhere near the amount that Kingdom Hearts 3 sold, like on the Xbox. Like it didn't sell as much on the Xbox, nowhere near compared to if you got it on the PlayStation. And that's primarily because a lot of people who have a PlayStation usually are people who also have played Kingdom Hearts on the previous console, because there's like this kind of people have like a brand loyalty aspect of it. Oh, this game came out on this, and I'm going. If you like Halo, you're probably going to buy a new Xbox, right? If you like Gears of War, you're probably going to buy a new Xbox. And that's the thing. I think the big thing that Xbox kind of suffered in the last console generation is the lack of good exclusive IPs, which kind of PlayStation did a much better job about it. And that's why a lot more people that's why like there are more PlayStation sold around the world than Xbox. Like Xbox doesn't even like usually report how many they've sold in a global picture, because they don't want to kind of have that comparison made against Sony. They'll probably put up like, oh, like it's increased by 10% or this and that, but they won't put the raw numbers because they know that it's going to look bad. So this time in this new generation of Xbox Series X, they're kind of laying down the groundwork of, oh, we're going to be focusing on Game Pass, which you've said that you've enjoyed Game Pass. I think you're not the only one. A lot of people really enjoy that feature because it's a great value for money thing, and it's slowly going to roll out into an infrastructure that is kind of like its own kind of Netflix for video games, right? And a lot of people really like that. What's it? Is it xCloud? Is xCloud
xCloud is like the next thing as well, where it's like, you can literally just stream the games and your saves on like mobile phones basically, as well, and like and even or PCs anywhere. So basically, at any time you can jump in and play a game, and I think that's where the next gen is and where it's going to be won. It's not
it's Stadia, but good.
Yeah, it's Stadia, but good, because the hardware is like pretty much the console of the Xbox Series X as well as the PlayStation 5. Like the Xbox is more powerful than the PlayStation 5.
I think, but I'm pretty
But in the end, it's like if you have a powerful enough PC, you can play it. And I feel like it's all these like little gradual things where it's like even Sony announced like, okay, only like the top 100 games at launch will be playable for PlayStation 4, whilst like Xbox has like, oh, you can play original Xbox games on your new Xbox thing. So it's all like all these small things, or even like cross-platform play that like clearly like Microsoft has just been doing all these things just because they were behind. Now like this next gen, if Sony doesn't do it, then it makes them look like dicks.
Look bad, yeah. Well, and that's because it's the Xbox initially kind of with the Xbox One had like the kind of anti-consumer tactic of, oh well, it's going to always be online, and we're not going to have discs, you can't share games, or you have to like do a backflip and solve a Rubik's Cube to play a video game. And Sony's just like, oh no, you can just borrow someone's game. Like obviously they kind of saw the marketing, and they grabbed it, and so people kind of responded really positive to that, because again we haven't transitioned fully towards a fully digital market, and nor was it a good time to change it, because I think like I saw that and I was just, what the fuck are they doing, right? Remember Kinect?
Yep.
Remember Kinect was the thing?
Yep. But that's the thing. That's why because like useless peripherals. That's why I'm semi surprised, but not really too surprised that there's for example, no VR support for any of these consoles, as far as we know. Like they kind of been they probably saw the writing on the wall, and they're just like, no one really cares about VR anymore, or like it's still very nichey.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, right? Like VR's all well and cool, but like I think the moment, like the fact that you still have to have like these giant things on your head that kind of cause your like head to hurt after a long time of using, and it's not very intuitive. You still have to like kind of either physically move or like click to move and things like that. Like it looks cool, but I don't think it's very pragmatic for a video game at the moment. Maybe in the future, like we'll eventually come to the point where, these will just be like putting on goggles, or I don't know, putting a chip in your brain if it's a cyberpunk future that we're going towards, right? Like it's going to be something like that where games kind of are more streamlined and can, you can use VR. But at the moment, like, yeah, it's like you said, like the writing seems to be on the wall that, yeah, like people aren't really using these consoles for VR, and they looked at the numbers. And to be honest, VR is still pretty expensive to, like an expensive market to kind of go into. Like it's very high investment for very low return. I don't think the games on the platform are amazing. They seem very interesting, like playing like battle simulators and stuff like that, but they don't seem as good or intuitive as other kind of similar first person hack and slashes or RPG games.
Not
Right?
only that, but it's
So,
like the interest I see is like a lot of the times is just on YouTube videos of people like screwing around, or even stuff like
mm,
VR chat seems to be like a thing, and that's not
mm,
technically even a
yeah,
game type of thing. So it's like,
yeah, it's just yeah,
yeah, why? Like it's like, oh yeah, I spent like under $500+ for a VR thing, and I think that's the problem with VR. It's like this is probably like the second time, like this is like the second gen of VR. I feel like at some point we're going to get to a point where it's like it's going to be really easily accessible when it's like really cheap and easy to use, and it's like, but
hmm
until that point, we're not there yet.
yeah, exactly. And I think like look, like we said, like Xbox is moving towards kind of buying a lot of either IPs or companies to make their games, but I think Sony is as well. Now, I don't know if you've seen this, but there was a lot of stuff, rumors about their developing like a new Silent Hill game. Kojima was on like Twitter, and there was like you guys can look it up. But essentially, it was like a Twitter post that he said, and it says, "Sorry, I've been silent," and something like that. And then on his pencil, people kind of hyper zoomed in, and they showed that, oh, on the pencil it says pyramid. So it's kind of like a sign of, oh, well, maybe they are making a Silent Hill remake, or it's continuing, or something's happening. But there's all these other kind of rumors about how PlayStation might be looking to buy the Metal Gear IP, and the Castlevania IP and Silent Hill, which would be really cool if they do, because Castlevania at the moment. But neither are they doing any much with Metal Gear or Silent Hill, and it
Yeah.
kind of
Well,
lends
that's
to
the
the
thing. To be
rumor.
fair, like the only Castlevania we have is like, yeah, Netflix, but it's like out of that, like they're not really doing anything else with it. It's like, or like there's and by the way, I'm surprised that like normal people know about Castlevania, and I think next Netflix for that. But it's like, yeah, Konami in general. Yeah, we like basically for the past like what 6-7 years has done nothing with
Mm.
any of it aside from like
Pachinko
spin-offs
machines.
and getting all these pachinko machines
Oh
and getting
yeah,
money.
remember that
Then there's
that
like
Metal Gear
there was like Metal
Survival?
Gear Survive,
Oh god.
which kind of disappeared and stuff like that. So it's like I'm at least happy if this is true that something happened. Now might not be true, of course, but like at least I would say probably if anything was going to be bought, like I would say, because obviously if the rumor would be true that like at least Kojima would be doing that,
hmm
and the only way he would do that is because I think his studio is bought by Sony, so it makes sense that he's working on that. Now with Metal Gear, I'm not quite sure if Konami would be like, yeah, sure, let's buy out that, and then Castlevania probably as well, because like honestly, like
Yeah.
we haven't had a Castlevania game in a while.
hmm
The real question is like if it's all done by Sony, like who's going to be handling what at that point? Because
Oh
then
well,
you got
they're gonna be getting Kojima to,
yeah, no, but
because
not only that, but like Kojima is one of those guys who doesn't really make games often. He's like
no,
one of those guys like once every like generation or two, he'd make two games.
yeah,
So it's like if he gets all those IPs, the real question is obviously he'd probably be doing Silent Hill. And then, but the real question is like Sony at some point would be like, okay, this person's now making like a Metal Gear game or something. Like for
yeah.
example, like
Look,
it could be like I don't know the guys who did the SOCOM games, like
hmm
that's a Sony studio. Whoever the hell
hmm
does the SOCOM games does Metal Gear or something. But like
well, look,
Castlevania to me is like very hard to make into a game because that's mostly a Nintendo thing as well.
well, yeah. I hope that look, there is like a chance that maybe they have to make like Castlevania, like how there was those like kind of kind of like the reboot Castlevania games. Do you know what I'm
Yeah,
talking
they're Lords
about?
of Shadow.
Yeah,
They were pretty much God of War. But
yeah.
with a mythological beast, which is basically God of War, but not all Greek. And which
Hmm.
by the way, I like the first game. The second game's really bad, but I did like it. It was a pretty good, solid
Well,
game,
I
I'd say.
mean, look, if they follow the same kind of formula that they have been, with like, kind of looking at like the game space, like I could imagine them making something like a Dark Souls-esque Castlevania game. You feel me? Like, as in you fight like werewolves and vampires and crazy ass shit,
Maybe they
as
get
like a
From
vampire.
Software to do it.
Yeah, and you get From Software to do it. Why not? Like they've been making shit for Sony before, so like it'd be something that I wouldn't be too surprised if they do, because the laws there. It's dark enough if they want to make it. And it kind of is a form of the game that isn't the traditional style. Like, like if they're not going to do like a game like the original kind of Castlevania, like, we've obviously been talking about how much we love Bloodstained, Ritual of the Night, right? But like, they're probably not going to go towards a game like that, because that kind of game doesn't sell as well. They're not going to get the numbers that they need for it. But it'd be really cool if they do something. I'd love that. And to play another one, another game from those series. I can't say I'm like a hardcore fan, but I do love like the play style of games like that, the kind of RPG side scrolly mechanic. And I'm also a sucker for kind of 2D sprite works. Although Bloodstain is 3D, but it is still like a really good looking
It
game.
has the
But
same.
yeah,
It has the same charm. The real question is like okay, so that's Castlevania, and then
mhm.
okay, so then we've got Silent Hill, which is obviously going to he'll probably have some different ideas of because obviously the PT demo that was supposed to come out and everything, it was
Mhm.
supposed to be the whole Silent Hill thing. I'm assuming it might have the same. It might be the same but slightly different. And
Mhm.
maybe Del Toro is still on board, because I remember that was a whole thing with the
Yeah.
Hellboy director and everything. The real question is what happens with Metal Gear, because that's his darling. I feel like Metal Gear Solid 5 was a pretty damn good send off. I would say, in a sense of like, this is
But
the
is
next
it?
evolution of all Metal Gear stuff. But the real
Yeah, but
question is like,
you
what is he doing with it, or is there more stories to tell?
why not? Why wouldn't there be? Well, I mean, isn't um Metal Gear 5 technically a prequel? So
Yes, yes.
why not set it in the future and just have like a different character play Snake? Like, there's always like a new clone or a guy who changed his body to look like Snake or look like this guy. There's plenty of bullshit reasons that they can use to kind of reintroduce kind of classic characters, but then also make the game contemporary with like modern times. Like the thing is, like Metal Gear Solid 5, like people really liked the game. And but the thing is, like, I think a lot of the time, like, people kind of thought, well, 4 should have been the real send off, right? Because it's obviously like the end to the I guess Solid Snake storyline, so to speak, right? Whereas something like MGS5, for a lot of people, felt like, well, Konami was trying to force another sequel from Kojima, who either kind of doesn't do things half-ass, like if he's going to do something, he's going to put like his all into it, which led to the longer than necessarily, or longer than expected time for the game development. But then also led to a lot of the content eventually being cut. I remember that was a point of contention. Like people kind of found like the ending was kind of weird, right? Like was
Yeah,
it the ending
the ending was a little bit off. Yeah.
yeah, and I think part of that is because there's like a whole chapter that they cut off or something. Um, and so ultimately, I think that if you kind of have it under Sony, and if Sony is able to kind of wrangle Kojima a little bit and be like, hey, this is what you need to do, you have like freedom to do it, but like you have to like keep it within X or Y. I think there's a lot of really cool things that can eventually come out of his mind. It really comes down to, what story does he want to tell? Because I think like, a lot of the stuff that he talked about in old games have still become relevant. It's really funny that every time I see somebody posting up a video from like a really old game, or really or listening to a song, and the lyrics are still kind of relevant to what's going on in the current era. And I think like Kojima is the kind of person who kind of looks at what's going on in the state of the world and makes things that are relevant to that, even if it's like like not everybody enjoys it. Like for example, like Death Stranding, obviously I think that gets a lot of like obviously all the kind of news media like kind of love it because it's like, ooh, like let's go around delivering parcels. But there's so many people that I've talked to who've played the game that like either like they kind of like the concept, or they're like kind of the story is kind of interesting, but then ultimately like the gameplay is kind of meh, or the story kind of loses them or is repetitive, right? Like but ultimately like the stuff that Kojima explores from a thematic point of view, people really like. It's all about having a fine balance between good story, good gameplay, and keeping the players like wanting to come back and play the game, right?
Mm.
And
And
I
not only
think
yeah, but not only that, but it's like a lot of the Metal Gear stuff. Like I'd say, story wise, is probably convoluted, but there's a lot of cool, interesting stuff. Like if you just
mhm.
type in, for example, like I think it was a MGS2 codec predicted the future, and it's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
a lot
yeah,
of the stuff is like actual, yeah, did happen. I'm like, oh shit, like
yeah,
Kojima
yeah,
was
yeah,
up to
exactly.
date with this stuff, you know?
Well, yeah, exactly, because he did a lot of kind of research in regards to what people thought would happen in the future, especially when it came to civil liberties and the expansion of like government and data and espionage, like looking at like what has happened in real life in the past and what could potentially happen in the future. And subsequently he's seemed to be right about it, right? So yeah, I could imagine him like if they get an idea, and if he's given the kind of freedom to make it, but then also given a little bit of like maybe like a nudge in the right directions, like hey, like make a game, but make a game that's like good. I don't know, like have you played Death Stranding, Don?
I played a few hours, but obviously I've got a backlog of games, and I'm like, I'll still give it a shot, but it's like it is very different, like game. But
Yeah,
I
exactly.
like that's the thing. I understand the concept. It's got a little like a lot of Kojima isms in the sense of it's got a little
Hmm.
like a lot of cool mechanics and a little hidden stuff to do, but it's just like yeah, like I don't feel the need to, I guess 100% to play it, because I think it's like with the Metal Gear series, it has that backdrop of like stealth
War. Yeah.
espionage and war, and it's like because like I even just watched a recent video about MGS4 and how interesting it was, and I didn't know how interesting it was until like this guy was telling me. I'm like, oh yeah, it did have all these things where it's like since it's in the middle of the war zone, it's a very different Metal Gear game where it's like a lot of the action was happening in front of your face. You could you know, go to conflict, get out of conflict. But on top of that, there was like a real life marketplace when it comes to guns. It was always fluctuating, and I always found, and then there's the whole thing, and it's a very Kojima thing. Snake had his iPod, and relaxing music. When you play relaxing music, he calms himself down. When he calms himself down, you're better at stealth. So there's all these little small like little things that Kojima does in his games that I really love, and I'm
Hmm.
assuming Death Stranding has a lot of those types of things. I just haven't had time to kind of delve into it.
And look, honestly, I think that really comes down to the fact that it didn't do a good job at kind of keeping your attention, right? Like a good game keeps your attention, and you want to keep playing it. So hopefully, it means that in the future, like if you think like if Sony does acquire these properties, that's excellent for PlayStation going forward in terms of like maintaining their kind of lead on Microsoft in unique IP. Because I mean, like I mentioned, like Spider-Man. Apparently, Spider-Man's getting a sequel. I don't know if you saw about that, like Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, I
And
think that's a given.
the rumor is that it's gonna have like Venom and Carnage in it, which obviously and new kind of like zip lining mechanics, because I think like a lot of people like everybody remembers what is it, Spider-Man 2 from the movie, and everybody loved the kind of swinging mechanics in that game, and then this game came out, which is it does more of that kind of like it's like a hybrid of like a Spider-Man slash Arkham game, right? So people really enjoyed the mechanics and the game, and now we have more. I just hope that Spider-Man 2 and the original Spider-Man, hopefully that comes out on PC. That I've got my fingers crossed that hopefully like I will be able to play these games, but I don't need to buy like a $1,000 console, because apparently all these consoles are going to go up in price. Like I mean, I'm pretty sure all of these consoles are also going to be delayed. You know what I mean?
Yes, because of this
So
crisis, yeah, definitely 100%. Like that's the thing. Apparently, Microsoft has said, yeah, it's still like coming out November or like holiday season this
mhm.
year. But we'll definitely see. Or as we mentioned before, they might do a thing where it's going to be like a shortage, like they did with like the PlayStation 3 and like the Wii, in a sense of like
Mhm.
I remember a lot of the times it used to be hard to manufacture these things, and it was hard to find
Well,
consoles. Well,
I,
that's the reason why you pre-order consoles and they sell out, and that's why people lined up
well,
to play it. But now, like we didn't have it, last gen.
the problem is like there won't be a shortage. There will actually just be the fact that it's just too expensive to make, right? Like there isn't necessarily like I think like apparently it's like costing Sony like 450 USD to create like a console, like a PlayStation 5 last time I checked. And yeah, like that's obviously a cost that the consumer's gonna have to eat up. So I think like they'll make the console at whatever price they think they need to make it at. It's whether or not people under this current circumstance are really interested in investing all that money into a new console, right? Or whether they'll just hold off for a year and just keep their PlayStation 4 and their Xbox One and just play, I don't know, Destiny 2 or some other free to play game, like Fortnite. Like why not? Like that's free. You know, it's not gonna bother them too much about it. So yeah, I think it would be interesting going forward to see whether or not they do keep with their release schedules. But speaking of Marvel, like I mentioned, I don't know if you saw Marvel's new superhero team that they introduced.
Yes, I did. The New Warriors. Now the only yeah
It's
yeah
the new Warrior.
yeah because the New Warriors, because I think the New Warriors that came out I'd say probably 2016 ish. I think that one had like what, Squirrel Girl, I think.
No, no, no. So I think the new Warriors were from like the 90s or 80s, right?
The one, I don't
Um,
know,
and,
but I swear to God, there was the New Warriors that came out like 2016, 2017 that had
maybe,
like
well, I mean,
I
here's the
think I
thing.
think that
There's
one
like
had
a
like Squirrel Girl. I do remember Squirrel Girl, and that's when like everyone knew about it because I was like, oh look, everyone about Squirrel Girl. And I remember
oh
that
well,
was supposed to be a TV show, but I think like that got canceled ages ago. But yeah,
oh okay, yeah,
New
I think
Warriors.
well, yeah, because like I think so the new Warriors were kind of like a group of I guess like a superhero team that kind of rebelled against the status quo from like the 80s, right? So they were like these kind of, ooh yeah, we're radical, we're hip or whatever, like trying to keep up with the the modern generation of people and what they like. So I wouldn't be too surprised like there's probably been several iterations of them since, but those kind of original new warriors make up the kind of the new hierarchy in this series. And so there is a new warriors, which are supposed to be kind of like, I guess they're kind of like supposed to be the Teen Titans. I guess that's probably the best kind of most apt comparison that I can compare it to. But yeah, there's like an overweight, like I guess like
I think there's no easier way to
woman.
say this.
What fat? Is
Yes,
that what I'm saying? Oh, okay. Overweight,
fat,
yeah, obese,
overweight. Yeah,
obese. Yeah, like
big.
look, I'm not. Look, I mean, I wasn't actually trying to be nice. Like that's literally what she is. Like, like it's I forget what's her name. Trailblazer. It's essentially like this character who's like extremely overweight, who has like a magic backpack, and her like she's an orphan, and but the magic backpack belongs to her grandfather. Like it's like
What
this
is this, Dora the
convoluted.
Explorer?
Yeah. Well, I mean, she kind of looks like Dora the Explorer, like a really overweight Dora the Explorer. And the thing is, like, I look at this and I'm like, why does this woman have like a thigh gap that big? She's overweight. She shouldn't have a thigh gap, right?
There's
But
no
like,
there's no gap.
well, yeah. But that's what I'm saying. Like, it's like these weirdly, and then you have like this other character called Green Time, who looks like some kind of Ben 10 knockoff. I don't know if you've seen that. Like he's called Screen Time because apparently like a lot some of these characters are named after like things that people have associate negative connotations to. So screen time is supposed to be like a terminology used in order to like kind of limit like younger kids from using the internet.
Wait,
Again, I don't have.
wait, what's negative of a trailblazer? What I don't
I
understand.
have no. You see, I think she's the exception. I don't think she has like
I'm like trailblazer. Isn't that like a good thing as far as I
a
know?
good thing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think the ironic thing is like she's the one to go first into battle, even though she's like, I don't know, really overweight, and I wouldn't expect her to be the first one to be in front of anything except at a fast food line or something. But hey, that's just me. As a slightly overweight person myself, but this is what I'm saying, right? Like when you go to comic books, you're trying to find like the pinnacle of human form, right? And then you have okay, so this screen time guy. So get this, his origin is literally that like he inhaled his grandfather's internet gas, and is now basically Google.
So,
Uh,
chatters, I'm gonna tell you one thing. What the hell's internet gas?
I don't know, bro. I kind of really like. I read the sentence and I was like, it kind of almost sounded like a kid was making up like the description for this, like, and then he like inhaled internet gas, and then he can search things on Wikipedia. Like, okay, yeah, sick.
Or you could
Um,
do what DC did with Cyborg and be like, oh, you can access like everything under databases and online.
Well,
That's
yeah,
it.
by making him a half android, yeah, makes sense. Make someone in like it's one of those things that seems so weird. Like he inhaled internet gas. Like it almost sounds like a
And then you have
'90s
to explain
concept,
like
right?
what is internet gas? Why do you have to make this thing in this universe now called internet gas? It's like
I don't know.
where you could have just been like, oh, there could have been an accident where like you could easily do
It's
the stupid version of like he spilled coffee one time when he was trying to connect his like Ethernet like internet router, and all of a sudden he got electrocuted. And now he's got the
well,
powers.
yeah. Look,
That's an
look.
easier way to do it.
Well, yeah. Like it's one of those things where they're trying to like his origin seems less bizarre. Sorry, more bizarre than Spider-Man's origin, right? And like Spider-Man's origin's already pretty like kind of like it's out there, right? Like it's like, oh, it's a spider that's radioactive. Like the original version of Spider-Man was Spider-Man got bitten by a radioactive spider. Like it kind of doesn't make like it doesn't make sense now because we know more about how like radiation and genetic mutation works, right? But like back then when it was created, like radiation was known as, oh, it was the thing that changes your DNA, and therefore a radioactive spider could also change your DNA. Now we know more. Like I think in the Spider-Man, sorry, it's like Marvel, not Marvel now, but there was like kind of this reboot version, the Marvel universe that they did, and in it they had like a genetically manipulated a spider that basically like transfer, like when it bit Peter Parker, it basically injected its DNA into him, and that DNA would then like kind of rewrote his DNA to have spider abilities. Like that's a far more like leveled, like again it's completely fictitious, and you have to obviously you have to have like a bit of like wiggle room when it comes to the creation of certain things like spider abilities, but it's far more like believable and uses modern science more than, oh well, it's just radioactive. Like this, I'm sure there's some kind of explanation about the internet gas, like, oh, it's like nanites or something that can have like nano supercomputers that can surf the web and stuff. But like, yeah, apparently like now all he sees is things in memes, and it's just like, what is happening? um and then there's like the twins, which is like a gender neutral character who has like the called Safe Space, and his sister or their sister, um called Snowflake. And it's supposed to be like, again, it's supposed to be these characters that have taken on like a negative name and have made like it their moniker. And so like, for example, like Safe Space can make shields and stuff, but only for other people, and Snowflake can make deadly snowflake, or has like deadly ice abilities or something. Um, yeah, it seems like a really really bad parody, that people would usually use to mock like these terminologies, but like it's like if you made a superhero and made him like Cuck Man, right?
It's like, oh, you're
Um,
handicapped. Okay, we're gonna call you crutches.
yeah, or Simplord, like some like, but you actually unironically make it a superhero, right? It just looks so bad.
Well, that's the thing.
And
That's the thing. We only talked really about the names and the concept, which is already bad. But like, if you just search up like New Warriors Marvel like 2020 or whatever, the art is terrible. Like
oh,
this is
really?
like
I
some.
didn't.
Well,
Oh, okay. I
I'm
haven't
just
looked
saying,
at
even
the
just
art.
the concept so far, like the characters and the way they look, it's just awful. Like I feel like
Yeah.
it's basically a downgrade. It's like I don't know. Marvel's had that
There's
for a while, where it's like we don't have those really awesome, cool designs that we used to have, and it's like
I think
and that's the thing. Going back to like even just saying like Western cartoons have adopted like the Kel art style, where it's like really lazy, really like everyone kind of looks
simplistic.
similar, and I hate that style with a passion.
But look,
Whilst I'm a person who's like I like that '90s look where everything's uber detailed. That's my
mm,
thing.
look. You see, here's the thing, right? Like with kind of I don't mind like when the art style kind of is used like here and there, or it's like one artist's like particular like style. Like there's this I forget the artist's name, but he recently did the artwork for the Martian Manhunter series for DC, and it's like this really kind of like zany looking like art that looks really cool. And then like his art's really recognizable when he does comics for other people, like because I've been noticing because when an artist does like a front cover or something, you'll know like when it's done by Jim Lee or someone, like because they look really like in their particular style, and he's got one that's like that. But with this, like, yeah, it kind of looks like these kind of weird I don't know, like how like what is it, like Steven Universe and Adventure Time and stuff, like these kind of really kind of simplistic art styles. That's
It
what
yeah
I kind of see
it
it as, like
yeah
stuff that I'd see
yeah.
on like Tumblr, or I'd see on I don't know, like some kind of that's the best I can kind of describe it. It looks like Tumblr fan
Well,
art for the
but that's
most
the thing.
part.
It's not only that, but like I do remember, like I don't know, it must have been like 10 years ago or something that like, the big two, Marvel and DC, they used to be like, okay, if we're gonna get you as an artist, like everyone, like there's a lot of people who could draw, and I'm
Mm.
not saying that that's a bad thing. It's like that it
Oh
still takes a
yeah,
lot of skill, obviously, but I'm
oh
just
yeah,
saying like if you can just
definitely.
draw and have a thing, that's kind of cool and interesting. But Marvel and DC, they used to hire people where it's like, okay, you can draw cool, competently, okay, but you have a style to you. Whereas, as you mentioned
Mm.
before, you can be like, I can look at a page or a panel somewhere and be like, okay, clearly this person,
This artist drew
did
this,
the
yeah.
art because like this person's art is like very specific in how they do stuff. Where it's like, I don't know, like Scotty Young does all the Marvel like kid baby variants or whatever it is. Like he has
Mm.
a very unique style, or like
Yep.
Frank Miller's
Mm.
very sketchy, very blocky.
Alex Ross, right? Like he has his that
Alex
kind of
Ross is like,
realistic, yeah.
everyone's like, peak human people, where it's like, they have chiseled jaws and everything's square
Mm.
as well, where it's like,
And it's
they
got
use.
like a realistic look to it. I think ultimately, like with stuff like art and stuff, like all the good books will continue um going on because it's like a combination of like good art, good story, etc. Like there's never a book that kind of has bad art that kind of lasts for longer than like 12 issues that they're initially kind of run for. I've been reading like a lot of really good DC comics that have like excellent art. And yeah, like I like especially during this crisis, which is kind of works very well during actually having a lot of crisis events happening like in the background at the moment. A lot of their art's like really beautiful. And I would recommend even if you read things digitally, like it's really quite cool to look at. So yeah, it's a shame that like Marvel's kind of direction with these um with the new Warriors. Like the only thing that I read from Marvel is like X-Men comics, but even then, like I'm starting to drop out of the X-Men comics as well, because I feel like a lot of it's like really esoteric or really kind of like one note with what's happening in the world. Although the reboot is very would recommend, but yeah. Marvel Comics, I think over time they're kind of slowly like not supporting it and kind of moving towards, because they don't really make that much of of profit through comics.
Well, that's the thing. Everyone had those crazy rumors probably about 6 months ago, where it's like they're shutting down Marvel Comics completely, or like,
Mm-hmm.
essentially the only real profit that's really coming out of Marvel Comics is the already existing IP for the
Mm-hmm.
movies that are coming out.
Yep.
It's like the actual comics themselves are not selling well, and it's
Well,
like,
yeah, it's because they're going for they're just try. It's kind of like a similar to like the Star, like what they're doing for Star Wars, right? Like they're just kind of throwing things and seeing what sticks, right? Whereas like and look, it's not like DC's doing that much better either. I just argue that DC's very more truer to their kind of demographic, and like if you read a Batman comic, it's going to be about Batman, and you're going to really it's about even a lot of their kind of spin-off books like the Terrifics, which is more or less supposed to be a Fantastic Four parody, is really, really good, and the characters are really good in it as well. Much to my surprise, also. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Marvel does move towards a direction where they're gonna, kind of like what they did for Star Trek, right? Like Star Trek, they stopped making IPs for. But they will allegedly they'll start making new stuff now, but like for the meantime, they're kind of like riding on like selling like original Star Trek merchandise, if that makes sense, right? So why bother making new stuff when you can just sell Spider-Man for like the umpteenth. But yeah, that's it'll be interesting to see where all that kind of goes. Now I don't know if you saw the thing from Ryan Johnson, what he said recently. Did you see the thing about the Last Jedi?
Yes, I did, and it all makes sense now. The pieces are all come together. It's only been like 4+ years, but it's all coming together. Or 3
Yeah.
years. 3 years.
Well, yeah,
I was
exactly.
like 4 years, 3 years. I don't know.
Well,
I feel like I've been scarred for a very long time.
bro, it seems like to me that like Last Jedi came out like last year. You know what I mean? Like it's that bad, and it leaves that bad of a taste in my mouth. But yeah, no, the big kind of news that Ryan Johnson mentioned in an interview was that they didn't have test screenings for The Last Jedi, and that apparently because he did have what is it? He did have test screenings for Knives Out, and it was one of those things that like kind of changed his mind about it, because he was like, oh well, no, test screenings are bad because it's gonna potentially ruin it, and like get
Slash
people
Ryan
like,
Johnson fashion.
oh man, like it's talking about huffing internet gas, right? Like that's what it kind of sounds like when I hear this fucking dude talk about anything. Like obviously talking about Knives Out, and he's like, obviously like the only other thing he's kind of really like mainstreamly known for now is Star Wars, because of how much he's dropped the ball, right? But like he mentions it, like he said, it was pretty much like a party in the theater. It was really fun. Like this is when he's talking for Knives Out. He was saying, "Oh wow, this actually plays. This is good." But here he says that with Star Wars, you can't test a Star Wars movie for a lot of reasons. I've always hated test screenings. And when we were making Star Wars, at certain points in the process, you're like, God, I would give my left arm to put this in front of 300 people in Burbank and see how it plays. So here's the thing, you could have, but they didn't. And subsequently, people kind of went into that film, and they thought it was shit, and that subsequently led to people like the movie. I wonder whether The Last Jedi has done. Sorry, the what is it? The Rise of Skywalker did better than The Last Jedi, because there was like a bit of like talks about it kind of making more money than The Last Jedi, but there wasn't any kind of.
Well,
I
that's the thing.
guess.
I'm assuming it was relatively close, but that's the thing. I don't think there wasn't really any fanfare being like, "Oh yeah, the Rise of Skywalker beat the Last Jedi."
Yeah, but I also wouldn't put it past, like, I guess kind of kind of modern news journalists, like kind of like calling to attention, because they were these kind of shills that kind of said about how, ooh, the Last Jedi was everything that Star Wars needed, even though it wasn't that good. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because
I would.
I feel like the whole thing coming back to that was just kind of like, oh, this is a fresher breath of air for Star Wars. But I'm like, yeah, but majority of fans think people were saying this is not Star Wars or the thing that we wanted. The whole thing with this is like, I don't care if Ryan Johnson made his own Star Wars thing as a spin-off, but that's the thing, as a thing that like, because that, as we've mentioned many times before, like if this was like a spin-off thing and he did like with different people, and the way he wanted to
It
play
might have been good.
it might have been something different. The thing is,
Yeah.
like, when you just say, okay, Luke Skywalker, already established character, we're gonna screw up his complete traits entirely, or like we're gonna ditch all these types of things, or be in the middle of a movie trilogy that's supposed to have a whole through line. It
Mhm.
just doesn't make any logical sense. And I
No.
think that's the main failing of it. That's why I think a lot of those movie journalists are like, oh my god, I wasn't expecting to play with my expectations for a Star Wars film. This is awesome, but it's like, no, but main Star Wars people want a set of expectations they're gonna get. You don't pull them
Oh,
out. You don't pull the rug behind them and just like, this is Star Wars now. Get used to it.
oh well, yeah, exactly. Like I think ultimately, he. I think again, this is very much like Ryan Johnson wanted to make his kind of dumb, edgy, like Star quote unquote Star Wars film. It was received really badly, and now like Kathleen Kennedy and the Star Wars like kind of machine has to like kind of rally behind the ridiculously bad film that he made, and they have to kind of double down on it. Unfortunately, this is just I guess the consequence that they are kind of left with because of the state of affairs of things over there. Right now, at least according to Wikipedia. Oh, actually, no. Here, I'll pull it up on Box Office Mojo. So, um, it it made wow, it's still okay, get this. So The Rise of Skywalker, it made 1.3333, I guess 1333 repeating, I guess, The Last Jedi. Oh no, here we go. 1.3 billion, like worldwide, right? Whereas you know Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker only made 1. Oh 07, 1.7 billion. But here's the thing: it made less money than the Joker.
And the Joker was like
The Joker did,
restricted to people who were like a mature audience.
yeah, exactly. And like it only beat the Rise of Skywalker by like $110,000, right? But it was made on a significantly a much more modest budget of 55 million. Whereas the Rise of Skywalker was, I think, apparently made with like 275 million. So the return, it was like significantly more for the Joker than it was for Rise of Skywalker. But look, as much as I love shitting on Star Wars, it just makes me just how much they've dropped the ball for it.
And yeah,
Because
it would have been cool if you had a test screening to know, like, oh shit, people don't like this. Maybe we'll do something about it.
no. Why that's too logical, mate. Why would we ever need to do anything? Not that you'd really be able to get any test screen anything at the moment, but that's the state of affairs of things going forward. I guess we'll have to see whether it's worth it. Whether Star Wars releases anything like new games and stuff. Like, look, again, I'm kind of more excited for Star Wars going forward in terms of like things that are like not, I guess, like kind of like the new Mandalorian season or the new. Although, have you watched any of the Clone Wars show? I haven't watched that. But
I've watched all the seasons aside from the new one.
yeah. I watched the old one, but I haven't seen the new season.
Yeah, I haven't watched the
But
new season, but I'll definitely be on there because yeah, it's just one season, and I'm assuming it'll just wrap up the story really
the
well.
storyline,
Yeah,
yeah. Well,
so
that's what I'm hoping too. But yeah, like like things like that, like or the new video game coming out. Like there might be what is it, like the new Jedi Fallen Orders sequel that might come out. Those things are far more interesting to me at the moment, and usually they're kind of like not in the hands of like Kathleen Kennedy and the modern Star Wars team. So we'll see going forward. Now, what have you been watching this week?
yes. So basically, what you were mentioning last week, and I basically watched it this week, is Mythic Quest. So this is that show that is based off. It's Ubisoft, I guess, semi probably funded thing, because it has a lot of Ubisoft things. But essentially,
Hmm.
it's kind of a fictionalized comedy show about video game development.
Yeah.
which is basically called Mythic Quest. And yeah, so far, like I pretty much watched all the episodes aside from 2 or 3. And yeah, I to be honest, I actually quite enjoy it. I wouldn't say it's probably the best show out there, but I think it's a good watch, especially if you're in the know for, I guess, gaming wise, because it's got, I think this very much appeals to gamers. Like as a general audience thing, I don't think it might not play that well to people who don't know like the little intricacies of gaming. But if you know gaming, I think 100% like this thing
Wait, was that?
it's got a lot of good in jokes. That's basically what I'm saying.
Right, got it. Yeah, the see, now you got me confused about
Intricacies.
No. Fuck me. Now you're gonna make. It's not important. All right. Maybe I'll come up with it later. But like, yeah, look, I don't know, man. Like, I kind of found I think the one episode that people were talking about was the one where the previous video game company that was like made in the particular.
Yeah, it was in the past. Yeah.
In the past, like that's the episode that people are like, "Oh my god, it's so good," and I'm like, "It's okay."
Like, yeah, it's cool to at least see that, and it's like I feel like that's very interesting, and it's like, and I feel like it's almost like maybe if they made a new version of this show, or like something like this show that kind of took it in a more serious approach, I think that would be very interesting as well, because like with that whole episode, essentially it's just these two creators in essence kind of being like, okay, we have a vision for this game, and this is kind of what we want to do, and it kind of shows the kind of like the origin of the game studio. I feel like that would be a completely different and interesting show in and of itself. Like if like that whole episode was a whole season or like 5 seasons. It's kind of like the show Silicon Valley, where it's basically this tech company, it had a really unique, interesting idea, and it kind of built its way up to be like this big corporation type of thing of kind of like, we have this idea and we're kind of growing, and we used to live in like, someone's house, developing something. And I feel like, a TV show like that would be really cool, because instead of, because this show is a comedy show and has a lot of, bits here and there, but if it had like a really good dramatization of video game development, and I guess the struggles of like, the game, the head office people, if you're bored out, for example, like EA was telling you need to add more loot boxes, for example, and you didn't want to do it. I feel like that would be very interesting dramatization as a show as well.
I think they have things like that, but I think the problem is like most of the show. Look, again, it is starting and it is its first season, so it's not like you can reinvent the wheel, so to speak, right? But like, I kind of feel like a lot of the shows focused on like the main guy, and I forget the Australian chick's name.
Yeah, so basically, Ian.
Ian,
and,
yes,
and then,
Ian.
Ian, yeah, and then Poppy, and Poppy.
Poppy, yeah, Poppy. That's like, yeah, it's kind of centered around those two. Whereas like it would have been nice to have like an episode that's not as centered around them. Like maybe about you see, I only remember him as Abed. I don't remember the actual actor's name in the show, but Abed, like he's like the monetization guy. Like he's the guy who's actually like on the business side of things. Like there is like obviously conflicts and stuff like that, but I don't know. It's one of those things that like I didn't find the show like that funny, and like I'm talking about it retrospectively. Like I don't remember my initial review, because it was a couple of weeks ago.
There's not many times where I've like actually laughed out loud, but I think for me it's more like it's cool to at least have something like, I guess, personified in game culture, and all things that are like, okay, but it's done in a dramatization. For example, like I think pretty much the first episode they talk about, basically introducing the item of the shovel, and then like, they basically just said, okay, if you give gamers any tools, they'll draw dicks. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's actually true. That's actually pretty, like, to me, I'm like, that's pretty funny because it's true. And I feel like a lot of me is just like, a lot of this is just like, it is critique of, I guess, modern gaming culture as it is kind of now. Obviously it could do a lot of new and interesting things that it really wanted. If it really wanted to, it could have very much pushed the button and seen how far it could have gone. Obviously it didn't do that. Obviously probably just didn't want to alienate certain people, but 100% like this thing could have been like, I guess a talking piece, rather than like something that a fun comedy show that kind of like is very base. And of course it does have some new and interesting things, like for example, like I think episode 3 or 4 they go to like a gaming con and they talk about like streamers, and you always got to appeal to different streamers, and I thought that was very interesting. But that's the thing. They could have gone a step further and been like, oh yeah, what, the dark side of paying a streamer to promote your game, and basically, all I'm saying is if this was a non-comedy show, I think it would have been better. But either way, comedy I think is okay. It's fine. Like it services, I guess. Like I think you got Ashley Birch's deadpan comedic delivery.
Yeah, but I don't even think they really utilize her like that well in the show either. Like all she's there is just as like oh hey, I play. Well, she's got two storylines. She's got her like kind of what is it, the romance plot between her and
The other
the other
tester.
girl, who's the other tester, and then there's just like the common trope of, oh well, nobody listens to them because they're video game testers, right? It's like those are the two kind of like one note kind of things that like that she plays. And obviously, again, it's the first season, I get it, like but there's more
There's more
kind of,
story to be told, I guess.
I guess. But yeah, like I don't, yeah, I don't know. I feel like this isn't that different from like Big Bang Theory. It's very um like it kind of like and I'd probably argue that Big Bang Theory does more or did more, because I think is that show still
No,
ongoing,
I
or is
think
it
it's gone.
finished?
I think
It's gone.
I
Okay.
think it finished like last year or something.
Oh, okay, right. So like I feel like that show does a lot more to introducing like mainstream culture to like video games and pop culture, but really all that show does is just make like it's like make a gaming reference. Nobody gets it. Ha 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 ha. And that's the funny part of it. Whereas like this show kind of doesn't do anything too different from that either. It's just the only difference is framed in the context of, oh well, everybody knows what video games is in this like kind of workspace because we all work with video games, right? Yeah, and then it's like just a combination of like just being like a community slash what is it, where's the guy, Always Sunny, right? Like
Yeah, it's
it's yeah,
always sunny community type of thing. Because
yeah.
because essentially the guy who
But I don't
plays
think but I don't think
the
but
Ian
I don't
guy
think
is like basically he's playing
yeah.
semi the same character where he's kind of like semi
Mm.
stupid, but in a sense kind of is very like arrogant. It's kind of like the same type of thing.
But I don't think the show does anything as interesting or as funny as like Always Sunny or Community. At least like Community is kind of like absurd. Like, well, actually, to be fair, they're both of those shows are kind of absurd, but they do it in like like, I mean, what is it in Community? Like, I love the episodes where it's about what is it, the paintball fights.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, like that whole concept is completely absurd, and not realistic. But within the world of like Community and what they kind of have in that like kind of I guess TV show, like it's very believable of the things that happen. Whereas I think the thing with Mythic Quest is it's still built around like the notion of, oh well, this is supposed to be real life, but then they don't really have like there's none of
Yeah,
that hyper reality aspect
it's
of
not
it. You know what I mean?
it didn't set up its hyper reality of like, okay, anything can go off the rails. Yeah,
Yeah. Whereas
and
like even in something like dumb like Big Bang Theory, like they'll get into some kind of like it's no like it's no different from what would happen in like Seinfeld, where they'd be in like this ridiculous situation that they have to get out of. Like I feel like the kind of weird or awkward spots like throughout the show. Obviously, you still got like what is it, 1 or 2 episodes to watch
yeah, pretty
of
much,
the
yeah.
show. Like yeah, like I there's like one big reveal like that happens towards the end, but it's kind of like, okay, it's a thing, but like whatever.
Mm.
In terms of like what I mean when you watch it.
Yeah,
But
but
yeah,
essentially
we'll
what I'm
have
saying
to.
is I think it's okay entertainment. The real question is like I'm hoping that at some point the next season, whatever it may be, it does more from its concept. Essentially, I don't want it to be one note. As I mentioned, like for something like Big Bang Theory, I don't want it to be this one note thing. I really do want it to evolve and have more depth to these characters in the situation. Will we get that? I don't know, but I'm hoping, and I think this is an okay to good, I guess, first season, and I'm hoping that it does more.
Well,
Especially
I mean,
especially if you know games and game culture, I guess.
the thing is, it's already got confirmed for a season, but I think it's one of these shows that are currently on that's currently delayed because of the global crisis that's happening at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it might be like a while till we get any more new stuff coming out of it. But Yeah, I mean, at least it's a new IP and it's doing something different.
Yep, absolutely.
Speaking of things that aren't doing, oh, well, I guess it's kind of different, right? But I don't know. Well, things that are different but aren't really different. Westworld season 3.
Remember
So
how we're all like Westworld season 1 was like pretty damn cool. It's pretty damn great.
oh
It
yeah,
had a
it's great. It's
mystery. It had so much cool stuff going for it.
hmm And then you have season 3, and it is bad in my opinion. My humble opinion, it is really bad.
I'm like, I think it's just very average, but like way worse than where it was, like season 1 and season 2 even, and even season 2 was a drop off. I'm just very curious to see where it goes. But even then, I kind of know where it's gonna go, but I am very curious of where, like, if it's actually gonna do it, because I'm like, this is to me very streamlined and straightforward, like way too much in a
Yeah,
sense.
I think the problem is they kind of learned their lesson from last season where they had like this uber convoluted timeline story that they tried to piece together with like oh trusting Bernard's memory or whatever, and now it's like oh well now they've escaped the West world, which they're not in Westworld anymore. They're in the real world
We're not
now.
Kansas anymore.
Um, and yeah, and then I don't know if you saw the end of the episode.
Yeah, where
They
there's
had
like a trailer kind of for like the whole season to come. No.
oh well no I meant the you know how the like
Oh, we're
uh
talking about Maeve's
Maeve,
storyline.
yeah, Maeve, she like wakes up in like Nazi world or something, like I don't
Basically
know.
World War II world, and I'm
Yeah,
just
World
like,
War Two world, I don't
and then I
know.
saw that, I'm like, okay, okay, I get it,
I'm
guys.
yeah, like it's just like okay, like what are they doing now? Like is there Nazi world? Is it set in like the part like well, I guess that's the thing. That's the question that you ask yourself. But like, you know, even the modern story is like, okay, cool. What's her face is uh
Dolores.
Dolores, yes, thanks. Dolores is hacking everything and trying to take over
Basically, she
assets.
controls all the technology in the world.
Well,
Basically,
not yet, but I think that's what she's moving towards, right? Like
she's
she's
gonna be Cortana from the end of Halo 5. Basically, spoilers,
kind,
but not
yeah,
really.
kind
Yeah.
of, right? Like we have her clone, which is technically in the body of that other the other girl who's the head of the company that made Westworld, right? So they have like those kind of simultaneously having their story and trying to like kind of go against the humans or like the human population. And then you also have like Bernard, who's on the run because he apparently like murdered someone. I think from like last season, he's been like blamed for like the murder of like a couple of people. So there's like that storyline, but it's like yeah, ultimately, what is it going to be? It's basically okay. So Dolores wants to hack that AI in order to attempt to try and take over the real world, while infiltrating human society as a human being. Like I don't know, like I, I don't know. It's like what they were really trying to do. Like this is essentially what you is kind of implied was going to happen at the end of the first season. The only difference is like, oh yeah, cool. We have like these nicely designed like motorcycles or cars that are in the future. There's like I don't know some application is the guys from the guy who's
Yeah, Aaron Paul from Breaking
Aaron
Bad.
Paul, right? Yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I was gonna say. It's like, oh yeah, cool. Like there's some kind of futuristic app that helps you commit crime, like almost like a gig economy style, right? Like
Now
Uber,
the real
but
question
crime.
is like like in the episode it kind of shows it, and you kind of get a glimpse of it, and it kind of got made sense with it. But when writing and visual representation doesn't do it too well, when they have because HBO does those little like mini documentaries at the end of the episode where they're just like,
Mm.
oh well, let me tell you about what this app is all about, and let me explain what the
Ah,
character's doing. I'm
okay.
like, okay, you're telling me like dead on dot points because you didn't explain it too well in the show.
Yeah, like they're info dumping or look, dropping exposition to
Yeah,
explain, like
because I
kind of like
kind of got it where it's
Watchmen.
like some sort of like app being like, okay, you can commit crimes and
I
things
mean,
like that. But essentially, in that little like mini pseudo documentary, they're kind of like, oh well, this modern future, there's no real crime going on, so but people are still going to commit crime, and this is a way to do it. I'm like, okay, like you could have somehow explained that somehow in way in the show, but like you had this
well,
way to do it.
I mean, to be fair, like I kind of got already from the point, like from the show, what it was. Like it's just kind of like a gamified app. Like it's kind of like, oh, they like it's unfortunately just kind of comes off as really cringe. It's like, you made money, motherfucker, or something. It's like, okay, yeah, cool. Like, because that's how people talk to each other
That's how
in the
criminals
modern.
act. They swear.
They swear. Oh yeah, isn't that edgy? They swear, right? Like it's one of those things where it's like, no, it would really be like, accept your payment of like $10,000 or some shit. And obviously it's like they're kind of dealing with like the modern, so like now there's like all intersecting, and oh, like is Dolores going to learn that humans are good, or is Dolores going to choose that humans are bad, and is Bernard going to teach her that, or is Bernard going to go crazy? Like there's nothing in this that kind of, it seems to be like a repeat of what happened in season 1 or 2 even. It's just continuation of season 2, right? It's like,
Yeah.
okay, Dolores wants to kill humans. Got it. And wants to live in the
Essentially,
real
yeah.
world.
Essentially, we need an arc, and I think it's like this is why I'm semi interested to be like, okay, what the end game of this, especially or at least this season or maybe next season is going to be. Aaron Paul's character. Obviously, is probably going to fall in love with with Dolores, and the whole thing is going to be like, will he be like, okay, screw humanity, or is he going to be like, no, I'm going to kill Dolores, or I'm going to stand with Dolores, or is it going to be like, okay, basically there's going to be this whole thing of like, you know, she's going to do these things, and he's going to help her to do it, even though it's the bad thing to do, or basically sacrificing himself for her. But at some point, there's going to be a turning point. Now, the real question is, with this turning point, is he going to be like, no, humanity's good, and then she's going to kill him? Or is she going to be like, you know what, I've learnt my ways? Is this going to literally be the last season of Game of Thrones with Jon Snow and Daenerys? That's what I'm basically saying.
I mean, it's already like, man, I'm falling asleep just talking about this season, man. Here's the thing. Season 2 was basically season 7 of Game of Thrones, right? Like it's a significantly inferior product of everything that came before it, and it's kind of when it was like running out of cool ideas to do. Whereas, yeah, I think the thing is, the whole show's called Westworld. It's supposed to be talking about the human condition. Is supposed, and look, to be fair, some of it is still there here and there, but it's supposed to more talk about like, oh well, humans and how they mistreat AI and take advantage of AIs, which is just kind of like an extension of how humans would treat real humans, under the guise of there being no consequence. The problem is, now that robots have become sentient, they're dealing with said problems. But it's not like we're having like an interesting human cyber war, like like a Terminator 2 style. It's just very much like, oh, okay, she's going to hack this, and then she's going to pretend to be this person, and then, oh, she's now but and everybody's turning the show's basically turning into Cylons, right? Like, oh, she's 3D printed this new guy, and he's going to replace this dude who she kills, right? It's going to be the same thing. She's going to just kind of keep on repeating and replacing people, and they're going to win, or they're going to, at the last minute, think humans are worth it or some shit, and then not take over the world.
See, from what I got from it is like, from what it kind of looks like, it's like kind of like the only person who can stop Dolores is Maeve. That's what I kind of got from it. As far as I
Yeah,
know, I don't know if there was a piece of dialogue that said like the only person to stop her is like another person like her, which is Maeve. So maybe at the end it's gonna be like,
I guess, but
maybe
like, who
something like
cares?
that.
But it's like, but again, it's like, who cares? That's like, honestly, that's what it kind of comes down to. It's okay, yeah. Like, all I'm seeing is, like, she's going to be able to do everything that she wants to do because now she has money. It's not like she has like hacking abilities. It's not like a robot who has like zero people skills, slowly gaining the skills and taking over the world. It's like, oh well, she
Basically,
can
she's already at level
level, yeah,
99.
yeah.
Yeah.
She's already a level your boss, mate. Like, she'll be able to do everything. Whereas like, there's nothing impressive about it. It's like, yeah, no shit. If like you were a fucking high IQ robot that was designed based on data collected from millions and upon millions of people to generate like a hyper a hyper intelligent version of a human. And at the same time, at the end of season 2, they even revealed that, and this was something that I thought was pretty pretentious as well, that in the end, they found out that humans are actually more simple, to design, like based on their mind. They're like more simpler than they are complex, and that in fact the AI that humans have created are more complex than humans. And that's supposed to be like the big kind of reveal that, oh, by trying to make AIs more complex, you actually make them less human because humans are actually inferior in terms of their quote unquote brain capacity. Again, I'm always pro human in the human AI war, but it's one of those kind of things from a story perspective of, okay, we find out that that's the reveal. How does that change the story? It really doesn't in any context. It's like, okay, cool, humans are dumb, fantastic, but how does that, like, is that supposed to be like kind of the juxtaposition with
essentially it's just
um
some stuff that they put in there because they just wanted to put in there. Like,
but it's like it's one of those things that could be interesting. It's like, oh, juxtaposition that's now happening with Dolores like wants to take over like humanity because she thinks that AIs are more deserving of the real world than the humans that created them. Is this supposed to be like a cycle or a pattern that happens with creation taking over or killing their masters, much like in Greek tragedies where we have the Titans creating the
the Greek
Olympian
gods,
gods,
yeah.
and then the Olympian gods killing their creators, and then subsequently a cycle happening where like the heroes such as Hercules being prophesized of killing Zeus and his ilk. Like, it's one of those things that, like, yeah, I get, like, maybe that's like the direction that they're trying to go with things like this. And I know that it's maybe not explicit that these are the kind of connotation that they're trying to have, like, oh, doing bad things is bad. Yes, get it. Like, again, it's one of those things. It really it really reminds me of Watchmen. It's like these really highly pretentious things that kind of aren't doing anything interesting with the idea that they're originally supposed to kind of play around with. Back when they're in season 1, when they don't have a lot of autonomy, but they're reliving their lives and they're learning they're not real and they're not human, or what's happening to them is like a part of like a program or a greater design, and then being able to rebel against humans. Like, those things are interesting.
Yeah, not only that,
Whereas
but
now,
you'd also say like the theming, or like, yeah, not only just the theming, but the setting is more interesting.
yeah, definitely. Like, it's like this. Again, it's like this contrast between hyper. It's like hyper advanced society that has robots that can be like 3D printed and created to look almost like humans, but then it's kind of contrasted with the fact that it's set in the Wild West from like the, I don't know, like 1900s or 19, I don't know when cowboys existed and shit, but like back then,
Late
right?
1800s.
Late 1800s, right? Like late 1800 cowboys, like those, that kind of like is a pretty cool concept. Like, and it wouldn't really exist in any kind of medium except for a theme park where you are trying to replicate the past using robotics. Like, it's like, and that's the thing, even the real world is so disappointing, in my opinion. Like, in the outer world, like, yeah, I guess like it just kind of looks the same, but again, like, I don't know, like, maybe we'll see more of the world, and maybe it's more like, I'd expect like the future to be more cyberpunk, right? Like,
Yeah,
the
because I swear to God, in the first season they were saying something about like how the real world is kind of boring, or like the real world isn't like, basically, I don't know, something was happening, or like I felt like
oh,
I felt like in the first season there was like mystery to it, because it's like,
mm,
obviously you saw Westworld and there was this whole mystery of like, oh shit, like what's outside gonna look like, and now once we see it,
mm,
we like, we don't care, it's very generic. Like,
yeah.
there
So,
was even theories that Westworld was on the moon or underwater, and I feel like
well, I
those
think I think I
those
think
were
the
really cool.
original I think the original Westworld movie was set on the moon, right? I think that's where the theory was, like, oh, well, because the first Westworld was set on the moon, this Westworld is set on the moon too. But then it didn't end up being the case. So it's like, okay, whatever. Oh, and it's not important. The moon isn't necessarily important for the point of the story. It's supposed to just have like oh, okay, like, it makes for a pretty interesting thing. Like, oh, could it have been that if it was set on the moon because it was like a safety procedure in order to prevent AI from leaving the like park and integrating with human society, right? But Oh no, we just have it on there. So it's not. It's yeah. I don't know. It's just really disappointing that in the end, like they're not doing anything too interesting with the world of Westworld, so to speak.
Aside from the whole
But
Nazi
again,
thing, I guess. But even then, it's just like even then, I know what's going to be going on, and like, but why? Essentially the whole thing is like, okay, we need something to still be set in like the park, quote unquote, because this is pretty much like where cool concepts are. That's why I thought the better concept for me personally, instead of doing the whole like let's take over humanity, it would have been cool to go to like to park to park to park and be like Westworld versus Samurai, like we kind of did, but then have Westworld versus like Nazis. I'm like, that's cooler to have like a war against all the ages basically, and like that'd be cool.
You see, that's the thing. It would have been. I think it would have been more interesting. Like the whole thing of last season was, oh well, you have one contingent that was trying to escape the park. That's like Dolores and stuff. And then you had like Maeve's storyline, which was, oh, we're all gonna send the AI to space heaven, right? Like send the AI to survive and live out their life in the space heaven so that humans can never capture their data and use it in order to like exploit humans for or whatever. There was some bullshit there, and that's why all of them died when through that weird panel. It's really dumb. I get it. I get what they were trying to do, but it was really dumb. Well, not dumb, just like not interesting, I guess. Like I don't know. It doesn't like grasp my attention as hard as like seeing humans interact with the AI and then seeing that there are things that are imperfect about humans that we seem to think are perfect about the robots, but then vice versa, like the robots are trying to replicate us, because they want to be more real. um and and some of that, again, some of that is explored in this current season, but it's not really done in a way. Again, this is purely off the first episode, so maybe I might be
First impressions are
corrected.
really bad though.
Yeah, that's the problem. I mean, I had bad first impressions of Watchmen, and I continued to have them throughout the season. But maybe there'll be like that one episode that I'm like, okay, this was like a really cool episode. But I don't feel like I'm gonna be impressed with like the conclusion. It's not gonna roll out and be like, I think for me, what would have been more interesting is at the end of Westworld season one, there it kind of results in like a slow rebellion um occurring within the park, where like maybe Dolores and Maeve work together, or they have like contrast, and then like what is it, Bernard is trying to stop them, so like that kind of leads to them transferring and going to different worlds. But the whole purpose was, oh, maybe in season two the problem is when they go to different worlds, they're always like going up against like AI that haven't freed themselves, and so there's always that conflict happening. And then eventually, by the end of season two, would be okay. They figure out a way to like recruit AI from the other kind of parks, and then in season three is like so that's when they interact. The Westworld people are interacting with the Japan world or Samurai world, right? But then characters from both Samurai World and Westworld then go to the other aspects of the park and like it gives an excuse to go to other like periods,
Yeah,
right? To
and not
have
only
like
that, but it keeps the theming interesting, and it's like
yeah,
essentially the show is completely different now because it used to be about the parks, it used to be about the setting and like the AI, but now this is kind of turned into like a normal science fiction fantasy show now,
yeah,
where it's
and
it's it's kind of it's not as interesting, whilst like it could
yeah.
be any other generic fantasy show,
Well,
sci-fi show now.
Well, yeah, but and that's the thing. Like, if you look at it, and the thing is, like, this season, like in my hypothetical version of Westworld, like season three would have been about how, okay, now they're gonna try and recruit like the last couple of robots, and then that's when the humans find out, oh shit, like all these robots are trying to rebel, and then maybe that's when you have like this kind of the war where they like kind of leave the facility, and then the company are trying to like hide the fact that AI have escaped into the real world, and then because they lied about it, they like spread and hide within our infrastructure, and then take over the world. Like that could have been done within like a season, like 5 episodes in the real in Westworld of them trying to rebel and fight and escape, and then the next 5 episodes about how they take over the world, how they decide to like, I don't know, take over, and then say now we have a whole season dedicated to what could have probably been done in 5 episodes. I say could have been done in 5 episodes, but I mean it in terms of like what you would need to do. It's like, oh yeah, hack all AI and then hack because they're not going to show like how they hack it. They just like, okay, we pressed a button and it hacked the thing, right? Like they're not going to go into the hyper
Yeah, they're
intricacies
not the
about.
nitty gritty of it.
Oh, I said the word intricacy.
Yeah.
um they're not going to go into like how they figured out how to do it. They're just going to be like, yep, I did a thing. It's like in every other TV show when they hack something. Oh, I hacked the FBI with a couple of button presses, or I inserted this malware, now I've controlled the world. It's going to be some dumb shit like that, and it's only going to be as hard or as difficult to hack something as they want to make it. We'll see. Again, maybe I am being a little bit too harsh, but I just haven't been impressed of how HBO have been handling their big name IPs as of recent. But I mean, I'm just purely going off Westworld season 2, Watchmen season 1, and
Of course,
the
Game of
last
Thrones.
season of Game of Thrones. So I don't know. I haven't really. I don't know. Maybe I've watched more HBO stuff. Maybe I'd be a lot more like. I don't know. You've probably watched more HBO shows than me.
Yeah. Well,
But
that's the thing. They got a relatively good hit rate because, like, I think like what they did.
What about recently?
Yeah, recently I'm not quite sure. I think there's a lot of things that they're still trying to do. For example, I think there's The Outside with Jason Bateman in it. That one's based off Stephen King book where he's just kind of framed for murder, but it wasn't him. I think that finished recently. And I've watched 4 or 5 episodes, and it's pretty damn good. But that's the thing. That's one of those things where it's like kind of like a one-off type of season type of thing. But to start like a franchise, like something as big as for example, Game of Thrones, because Game of Thrones was a monolith. Yeah, they're not doing too so well, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, I seem to have like a pretty
You have a good hunch
glass.
for things.
Well, no, well, yeah, I mean, yeah, you can give me more compliments if you want. I was more saying that I have a glass half empty view when it comes to a lot of my kind of favorite TV shows that are kind of being at least like distorted for like, I don't know, either really lazy monetary gains. Because again, like this should have been a 2-season show at the minimum, right? At the maximum, I guess it could be 3 seasons, but at the minimum, it could have been at minimum 2. 1 season would have been fine. The first season of Westworld could have just been that, but of course, everything has to be sequelized. So, okay, then you just make it 2 seasons. But then they didn't even conclude it at season 2, and I think much to the disappointment. The big thing is, we know at the end of season 2 that the man in the black hat or whatever,
yeah.
the man in black, he's like a robot as well, and he's gonna probably have some kind of role of some kind.
Well, to be honest,
forward.
he's like the only character I care about in Westworld. Like now.
Yeah, but do you care about him now that he's
somewhere in the future somewhere, but or he's like a robot, but still, like I feel like him as a character wise, like especially what he's probably the best thing about season 2 as well, where it's like about his daughter and everything. He's probably the only good thing that really came out of Westworld season 2, and it's like he's like, I feel like his characterization is a lot better than Dolores and a lot better than Maeve's. Like his
I mean, well, yeah, Maeve's literally like, I don't know. I remember I still have a lot of problems with Maeve. Like she's probably one of the most worst written characters in both seasons. I think she's much worse than season 2 because again, like it's just literal. Hey, I'm for some reason the creator's favorite. Not going to explain why though, but I am, and I can do everything that I want to do. That's it.
Yeah, bad writing, everyone.
Yeah, bad writing. But speaking of bad writing, I guess we can move on to our final thing that we've watched, and that's the Harley Quinn Birds of Prey, the Emancipation of Harley Quinn movie.
See, that's the thing. What is like? Because the title change. There was a title change, and it's a long title movie. I think like purely for marketing purposes, they put Harley Quinn in there, or it should, like to me, it should have just been called Birds of Prey. But then again, who actually knows about the Birds of Prey? Only hardcore comic book people like me.
Yeah, I mean, Birds of Prey. It's whatever.
But then again, who knew about Suicide Squad as well? It's just because it had Harley Quinn in there. That's why it got made. So
I mean, people knew. I mean, people knew the
I knew,
characters.
as I mentioned, but it's like I don't
Well,
know,
I mean,
like
even
not, but I know, but I'm saying non-comic book people, like
I mean, I think non-comic book people knew Harley Quinn, but like only because she's probably the most popular character out of all the other Suicide Squad members, right? Um, Whereas like with something like Birds of Prey, like the original cast of Birds of Prey technically has Batgirl, but this iteration is, oh well, Harley Quinn's basically replaced Batgirl as like the titular main quote unquote character in it. Um, yeah, what's your initial thoughts about this particular movie?
I don't think I'm too bad at this, like as in like I'm not too down on it. I think it's just a very like forgettable film. Like, and I think that's probably my problem where it's like it doesn't really do anything interesting. At the same time, it just doesn't. It's so bad where I'm like I hate this film.
Okay, well, what is a movie from DC that you think is worse than this film?
Worse than this film. I think
Yeah.
like that's the thing. I think
Out
Suicide
no no
Squad.
out of oh, Suicide Squad?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's probably about
That's pretty.
maybe.
Yeah, that's about right. That's about right. But
It's
Suicide Squad's
it's
really
probably about
bad.
that level. That's it. It's like kind of like it's around that kind of area because like obviously I've
Yeah.
liked a lot of stuff. Like I've liked Man of Steel, Batman v
Hmm.
Superman's. I think is an underrated gem. Um,
Yep.
you know, Shazam's cool, Aquaman's cool, Wonder Woman's awesome. So it's like all these things. So it's like it really comes down to
Name a because obviously have contrast with something like the MCU, right? Name a MCU movie that is worse than this film.
MCU film.
Yeah, MCU film. Out of the 20 that or 20 something movies that have come
Films
out.
that are worse than this one, I would say the original Thor film and Incredible Hulk. I think.
Really? I
I
feel
don't.
like the original Thor film has way more character than this film. Like
I know.
it's not that good.
I think
It's not
no.
that good of a
Anyway,
movie.
as in wait. The more I think about it, I think the second Thor film I think is a lot
Oh
worse.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like
Oh
that for
yeah.
that one for
Thor two.
me, because I'm like,
Yeah, Thor two.
because I was thinking through my head, I'm like, oh wait, was that the first or second one? The first
No,
one's
this
like,
is
yeah,
the second one. The second one was like one that I feel like I could have like slept through and still figured out what was going on midway. I didn't, but I could have fallen
yeah.
asleep in that film.
I think it's kind of like in there. It's a very low tier film.
Yeah. So I think like if you think about it, like I think Thor 2 is probably one of the worst films um coming out of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And that's what I'm saying. This
Oh,
film
and by the way, this is Birds of Prey is better than Captain Marvel. So
uh yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
so. I think so.
Yeah, it definitely
I think I
it's
could
more
watch Birds of
entertaining.
Prey
It's more
if I
entertaining
needed
than
to. If I needed to, I could watch Birds of Prey again over Captain Marvel.
yeah,
That's
sure.
basically how I frame it.
Yeah, I mean Captain Marvel is really paint by numbers by comparison to something like Birds of Prey, right? I guess with something like yeah, so I guess okay, so I guess we'll go over the plot Birds of Prey really quickly. So essentially, it's about Harley Quinn. Um, Her and the Joker had recently broken up, and she's been trying to like kind of hide it from everyone, but then eventually just kind of been like, "Fuck it, I'm just going to commit and just kill the Joker," and she ends up killing him. But that kind of leads to her no longer having the protection that she originally had. So a lot of people kind of want her head. Um, Now, including Black Mask, also known as Roman Sionis.
Also known
Um,
as Owen McGregor being awesome.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, and so it kind of leads to like a kind of I guess you could explain like a bunch of different things kind of exploding because of the death of quote unquote the Joker. Like one of the things is there was like a diamond that belonged to I believe the Bertinelli family, which again Helena Bertinelli is the original of what is it
Huntress.
Huntress. That's right. I did like how there was like this ongoing joke about how everybody was calling her like crossbow woman or whatever. And then she'd be like Huntress, and people were like, "What the fuck?" It's like, what does Huntress have anything to do with it? Like, I like it. I like how there was like stuff here and there that kind of made sense. Like in like again, it kind of reminds me of like the Harley Quinn like TV show in the sense of like they have like this hyper like the in a traditional Batman universe, like the characters wouldn't act the way they act, but in a joke, like in the mind of Harley Quinn and how it's supposed to be like like almost like a Deadpool style comedy. Like, you have Bane acting like an idiot. You have like what Scarecrow sounding like an English guy, and Clayface being like
a failed actor.
Well, a failed like British style actor. Like I forget what they're called, like a theater actor. Like that's what he sounds. Yeah, like that's how he talks and that's how he portrays his character. Like the real Clayface isn't like that. Like he's an actor. He isn't like that. It's kind of like parodying the characters, for the world that which Harley Quinn would like thrive in. And it kind of like harks to stuff like that. But like, yeah, it's about, again, to kind of go back to the story, like, yeah, there's like a diamond that has like the codes to like the Bertinelli fortune, and so everybody's trying to get their hands on this diamond, but it gets stolen by Cassandra Cain, who is in this movie is like a thief, like this like a thief that steals the diamond.
She's
and then
basically like a semi-orphan type of thing going on.
Yeah, and like she swallows it, and so the whole movie is about everybody trying to get their hands on her, including Roman Sionis, who hires Harley to kind of collect her as well. But then at the same time, everybody has their own kind of independent stories. Like, you have what is it? I was going to call her Black Widow, Black Canary, played by Jussie Smollett's sister. But I actually really like her. She's probably like the only other like kind of likable character in the movie. But that's because like she has like the most
like actual character development as well,
probably. Yeah, and that too, right? Other than Harley Quinn and probably Ian McGregor's Black Mask character, right? You also had like Renee Montoya, who's like a GCPD detective that like nobody listens to, but then everybody takes the credit for. Like, I get what they're trying to say with it. Like, all these people, all these like characters in the film, they all get wronged and nobody listens to them or nobody takes them seriously, and they're gonna come back and prove them wrong. But at the same time, it's kind of like the story's like, okay, for example, so they're trying to get their hands on the diamond. And most of the like towards the end of the film, it's like, oh well, they're really waiting for Cassandra Cain to like shit the diamond out because she's obviously swallowed it, and that's obviously like playing for a gag as well. But again, like a lot of what I guess a Harley Quinn movie that's mixed with the Birds of Prey, you'd think like they did the classic thing that I really hate in movies, like team up movies where they all kind of separate at the beginning, but then they come together at the end. Right, I really hate that these days because it's like nobody cares about all these kind of like get rid of either have each character have their independent movies and have them come together at the beginning of the film and work together. Right.
Well, like, yeah, because that's the thing. They only become the Birds of Prey like literally like as in team up together in the last like 20 minutes, and then the Birds of Prey technically is like not even existent. So it's like
it only exists after the fact. And yeah, like I don't know, it's so bad. Like I don't know, like I think they
I think the more that we explain it, the more the thing is this movie has a very simplistic plot that but it basically relies on character moments to go through, because essentially the whole plot is like literally Harley Quinn is basically broken up with the Joker, so people are trying to kill her, but at the same time like people want the fortune for the diamond, but they all kind of come together in the end, where all these little plot points come in. But all the story moves forward purely based on character moments, where Black Mask is like, you know what, I want to hire Black Canary, instead of just being a singer, to be my driver now, and now she's my driver, and now she has a conscience, and she betrayed me, now I'm gonna kill her. It's like very like non-existent. Like the MacGuffin is the diamond, really.
Yeah,
but it's like correct. But it's basically a really simple excuse for all this other crap to happen, where it's like, and Harley Quinn's just shoved in there because we need like someone to kind of everything kind of ties in together in a very simplistic way, where it's like Cassandra Cain has it, now everyone needs to get her. That's basically it.
Well, and at the same time, it doesn't like even like one character, the one character that you would think would have like the highest desire to get their hands on the diamond would be Helena Bertinelli, because it's her diamond, but she doesn't even know of its existence until the end of the movie. Now, I get it. I'm sure that it was done on purpose to be a gag, that, oh well, the one person who would want the diamond back either doesn't want it or doesn't care about it, but she ends up getting it anyway. So like, but she doesn't. Again, it's like she didn't want it. It's one of those things where it's like, oh, but one character that I kind of liked. Well, actually, there was a few characters I liked. I like Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. I don't think that's going to change. I think the problem is like the direction that they ended up going with the Birds of Prey rather than it being like a Gotham City Sirens. Like I think they tried to go for a, oh well, we want Harley to be a good guy, which is really weird because I found the whole scene like, you know, when she like storms the police office.
Yeah, obviously there's no killings. They use like what,
Yeah,
bean
yeah,
bags or whatever.
it's so dumb. It's like the real Harley Quinn who just killed the Joker wouldn't care that she'd kill a bunch of cops.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
But
I
they
think
had
that,
to.
and I think that's the problem as well, because the Birds of Prey, quote unquote, are good people. They're more or less good type of people. Where like,
Yeah, well, yeah, they are. Well, they're literally supposed to be superheroes,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
But it's
yeah,
like
they're
they
doing
couldn't.
good things. But it's like you put Harley Quinn into the mix, you're like, oh crap,
Like
she's
they
not
couldn't
good,
even
but
do
you know.
like like they couldn't even like do something like, you know what would have been a more smarter thing for them to do is, oh, Harley Quinn like comes in, yeah, maybe she uses like a colorful, like the beanbag was used in to like as an excuse to use like colorful gas and I don't know, like, you know, that kind
And
of
that's
like
probably
effect.
the one positive I can say about this. There are certain segments in this movie that have pretty good color pop. Like, and
Hmm.
that's kind of like my only like thing where I'm like, okay, they did really good visually wise in certain areas. You
Like,
know.
but here's the thing: they could have done something. It's like, okay, obviously Harley doesn't kill. Sorry, they didn't want Harley to kill, but like they could have done something like, oh well, she's still hyper violent, right? Like, as in she's willing to like break people's like legs or shoot him in the legs or shoot their hands off or whatever, and be like, hey, I'm kind of like Batman. I don't kill him. Like, there could have been a gag like that, and that would have been more funny than but then still would have kept true to like the Harley Quinn character that like, oh, she's still like kind of a psychopath. Um, but but she doesn't kill, right? They could have done something like that, and you know, again, done like a juxtaposition with how Batman is, because Batman often says, "Oh, I don't kill anyone, but I'll break their spinal column." So they never walk again, and that's almost like a fate worse than death, right? Like, you know, people often argue about like, oh well, you know, is Batman's way of doing things correct? And like, yeah, it's like at least they could have done something like that. And she kills like a couple of dudes accidentally, but it's like that's okay because they're criminals, right? But Harley, like those kind of things don't really matter to Harley, at least like the traditional stereotype psychopathic Harley. Like maybe the new iteration is far more like, I don't know, pro cop. I don't know. But it to me it kind of seems to be like a decision they made, purely based on, well, if she wasn't like this, then none of the other supplementary secondary characters would work alongside her. But all the other characters already think that she's a psychotic maniac because of her relationship with the Joker anyway. But
Yeah,
they
so they
still,
should have just fully gone with it rather than just
yeah,
doing that. Or if you're gonna do it this way, maybe she's gonna be like they could have done this cool story thing where it's like, no, the Joker made me crazy. I'm not that crazy. See, I'm trying to be nice and not try to kill people and have like an internal struggle of like trying not to
yeah,
kill
yeah,
people.
trying,
And it would have been this kind of funny thing where it's like it reminds me of that, you know, in Deadpool 2 where it tries to become an X-Men trainee where he's like trying to not to kill the kid. He's like he's
yeah, yeah,
where it's like
yeah,
I'm trying not to
exactly.
kill him, where it's like that would have been funny where it's like, you know, she's like very close to trying not to kill him, and as you mentioned before, have a thing where it's like, you know, have a scene where, you know, this guy's basically near death, but it's like, see, I didn't kill him. Like it would have been a funny joke and it would have been a
Yeah,
continued through line, but they
yeah,
didn't
yeah.
do
Like
it.
it. You see, it already sounds way better than it. But ultimately, I think the reason they went with, because they want to pose Harley, like Margot Robbie, producer of this. I think she ultimately got a lot of say in regards to you know, what kind of character and who they wanted to pair Harley with. And ultimately she picked oh well, I wanted to be a good character. And I think like, you know, there was like some criticism online about like how like, oh well, you know, a lot of this film, you know, it doesn't appeal to men because it doesn't have a lot of sexualized female characters in it. And ultimately, like, yeah, I can kind of understand like, oh well, yeah, that might be something that they're getting away from, but it makes sense because if you think about it, if you compare Gotham City Sirens, which is like a traditional a super villain, an all-female super villain roster. It has like three major DC female characters that are known for like their sexual appeal.
Yeah, well,
Catwoman, Poison
Poison Ivy
Ivy.
uses it 100% to her advantage. Same with Catwoman. It's
Yeah,
like
and
basically those two characters use their sexuality to, like, for example, like with Bruce Wayne and Batman, like to basically stop without even using violence. Like I feel
yeah,
like
and then you also have like Poison Ivy, who uses her plant pheromones to like manipulate like men and women alike, in order to do what she wants, right? But the thing is, that would have been a much better direction to go, because again, like in traditionally in the comics, and even in the extended like kind of DC comics and stuff, like Harley and Poison Ivy have like a relationship together, and that would be like something that you like a lot of kind of modern comics want to get into, which is like introducing like LGBT uh representation, and that would have been like an example of that, but they didn't. They decided to go with, oh well, we're going to have certain characters in it, like we're going to have Cassandra Cain, and she's like the what is it, the token Asian character who's in it. But the problem is like the character that they introduce in like the Cassandra Cain that they introduce in the world is nothing like the Cassandra Cain in the comics, right? Like I don't know if you know much about.
so they're basically just like, okay, let's see through DC's catalog who's Asian. Okay, this
Well,
little
who's
girl.
Asian? But it's not just that. It's also the fact that like Cassandra Cain is Batgirl, right? She is a iteration of Batgirl. So she's supposed to be the Batgirl in the Birds of Prey. But the problem is the traditional Batgirl is Barbara Gordon, right? So but they don't have like an aged up version. They have a young version, but then they also don't. I don't. Do you know anything about Cassandra Cain?
No, not really.
No. Okay, so I'll do a quick breakdown of who Cassandra Cain is and why it's a complete shame of what they did to the character. So, um, Cassandra Cain is essentially the daughter of Lady Shiva, who is the number one assassin of the League of Assassins, who eventually went on to be the leader of her own kind of. I think it's either like a subgroup of the League of Assassins or a competitive group known as the League of Shadows. In the DC universe, Lady Shiva is known as the number one martial artist, like way better than, not way better, but better than Ra's al Ghul and better than Bat, right? And even in some iterations, she's taught like Bruce Wayne how to fight. Like she's in Arkham Knight as well, and Cassandra Cain is basically her daughter. Now, Lady Shiva basically like grooms Cassandra Cain to be like the perfect assassin. Um, and eventually, when Cassandra like actually killed someone, she like felt so guilty about it and hated it, that she eventually moved and started joining Batman in his kind of war against crime and against the League of Assassins. Like that's what, and she's also a highly trained martial artist as well, but she's also supposed to be like a really like a shy, timid person. Like she's almost supposed to be like a kind of like a stereotype like foreign person who kind of can't speak English too well. Like she often,
Where it's basically being silent, but like if they really needed to, like kick your ass, basically.
yeah, right. Like that's the kind of character she is. Like but like it's kind of like like it's very similar to like the development of Damian Wayne, who was like brought up under the League of Assassins, but like she was also brought up under her mother. So yeah, she's supposed to be like this character who's like silent but deadly, and she's supposed to have this kind of rich backstory, but none of that is in this movie. And
Well,
she's
yeah,
just like
we didn't really get a backstory for her.
she's
She's just a
just
criminal
a
that
foster
pickpockets.
she's just a foster kid, who has her foster family like doesn't really want her or something, and yeah, she pickpockets, and Harley knows her and likes her because she reminds her of her. But yeah, like she doesn't really do anything that's like kind of cool or ninja-ish, and she doesn't really have that backstory. And trust me, they're not going to explore that in the DC universe going forward. If they haven't done a Batgirl, they're definitely not going to have like Batgirl's going to be in the new or a version of Barbara Gordon will be in the Batman movie that's coming out. But we're not going to be able to see anything further about Cassandra Cain in any capacity. There's that. I think Huntress wasn't that bad.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
Huntress wasn't that bad. The problem
yeah,
was like you needed more of her. I think like she was probably
yeah.
the good thing because like even at the end like they had the whole thing where I think she's like everyone's like, oh, she has rage issues, and she's like, I don't have rage issues, like screaming it. I'm like, okay, this would have been a really cool funny joke if this was like a whole thing, like a through line. However, they didn't get to that point where like they were a team for this to be like a running joke. It's kind of
Mhm.
like that's why I think a lot of people hail something like Guardians of the Galaxy so well because, as you mentioned, like you hate people teaming up at the end of the
At the
film.
end, yeah,
With
and
Guardians of
yeah,
the Galaxy, at the Guardians of the Galaxy, it's more or less in like the first like quarter that they
Oh
do
yeah,
kind of semi team
exactly.
up, and I think that's a better way to do it. And they should have kind of done
Yeah.
it in this way, so then we could have seen all these characters really work
Mm.
together instead of this one time. Especially even something with like for example Black Canary. We kind of get a hint of her powers. Like obviously, if you watch Arrow and shit, you already know her powers. But like she only really uses her like big like scream like once.
Towards the end,
Yeah,
yeah,
and it's
there's
the one thing.
and I think to most people it would just come off as really random. Oh, okay, yeah, she's a singer and she has like the ability to like sing, but it's like, what gives you any kind of insight that she would have this power, right? It would have been far more interesting if they had have mentioned like, oh yeah, she's like, like him, like they kind of allude to a bunch of different things, like, but they don't really in the end come together as something that's really cohesive. It's like, oh, we're gonna pick and choose all these things and make it like it's something of like a team. Like, same thing with the Huntress. Like Huntress was like, oh well, I'm here because like her story is probably the most interesting because it has the most story driven relevance because obviously she's like Bertinelli, her family got murdered. They show her she survived. She then trained to be an assassin. She's actually got the coolest background, but she has like the least screen time out of all the like characters in this particular movie. Um, and yeah, it's like, and her costume's like kind of lazy. Like this is the thing. Like yeah, I get it. This is what I'm sick of. I'm sick of all these. Oh well, it's the first film. You have to wait till the next film for them to get the cool costume. You know what? There's not going to be a second film if you don't make the first film any good, right?
Yeah,
And
there's no reason to sequel bait people if there's not going to be a sequel.
Yeah, well, and that's the, oh well, you could get a sequel. Well, you know what? You could have made the suit look better too, right? It's one of those things. And again, it's like, yeah, all right, well, you make it fully purple, and it kind of doesn't look like, it looks unrealistic. There are people who are cosplayers who make far more interesting costumes than I see
And make
any
it
of these
work.
big, and make it work than any of these big time movie studios do. Like, it's one of those things where you could just probably go on Instagram and just say, hire somebody from there to like help you design something that makes it look cool. But no, they just have to do everything in house and save money. And oh yeah. Last but not least, you've got Rosie Perez as Renee Montoya. I really like Renee Montoya in the comics. I think her iteration in the show, sorry, the movie, is really lazy. She's like kind of depicted as being like this cop who everybody takes advantage of, even her like ex like girlfriend or something, right? Um, it's like, okay, whatever. And then I don't know, she just seemed so out of place in the world that was happening. And usually, like, a lot of police officers usually are, but like in the um in the kind of Batman animated series, like, she's like, Renee Montoya is in there as well. She's like one of the cops. Like, it would have been better if like they would have had her with like another famous GCPD character like Harvey Bullock to like kind of contrast with them, or like have Jim Gordon actually be there. Obviously, they can't do that because, oh well, you know they have a DCU that they're building, so they can't have too many people that they're constantly kind of interacting with. But then it just kind of makes their kind of story arc seem really out of place in the grand scheme of the world. Because like, what does Renee Montoya have other than the fact that she works for the GCPD?
Yeah,
She's not really a
yeah,
superhero.
yes. There's nothing else. That's why it's
She
like
she later becomes a superhero. That's true. Like, she becomes the second iteration of the Question. So she has like, that kind of like, so if you look up the Question, he's basically kind of like a Rorschach-esque character who's like always trying to look for like conspiracies and look at mysteries and that, and has like this formless face. It doesn't. It literally looks like they don't have a face. Like that's what the character looks like. And it's called the question. The character's the question. She takes up the mantle of the question after the previous one dies. But you don't have that. She at the end of the movie she becomes a vigilante, but she doesn't take on a moniker.
She's basically like a retired cop that can probably use old
yeah.
cop databases or something. Who knows?
I guess.
Yeah,
I
think that's the characterization. A lot of that stuff is weak. Even like Black Mask, like I thought Ewan McGregor did a good job, like performing as like a very egocentric type of villain. The thing is, there wasn't really enough like characterization. I guess it didn't really show like he obviously he's like a very like weird dude. That's what they kind of like really show it as in the movie, but they really don't do too much about it. Or essentially I just wanted to see more of him because he just seemed very interesting in his delivery.
Yeah, like, well, I mean, it's kind of, he's supposed to be like a psychopath, right? But he doesn't do anything that's like, he does do stuff that's psychopath. I won't disagree. There's like obviously the scene where he makes like a woman like kind of strip and dance in front of him or something, and like, yeah, that's really like weird and off-putting. But there wasn't enough of that. There wasn't enough of. I thought he was just gonna kill the woman, but it's just like, oh, he just made her dance at gunpoint. Like, yeah, that's obviously like really a really fucked up thing to do. But it's not like, I mean, it's not like the Joker, It's like what makes
like
him
the Joker's like top tier, psychopathic.
But that's what I'm saying. It's like, blackface. Black Mask. He's supposed to be like a character who, has like, he has his like face like contorted or fucked up, and he wears the mask to kind of hide the fact that he's had like these kind of issues with his face. Like it would have been more in like he does aspects of it. Like you see later where he talks to, I think, Cassandra Cain's was it Cassandra Cain, like her parents or something, like skins her parents' faces at the beginning of the movie, right? Like it's one of those things where it's like, oh, okay, like, that's an example of like something that they could have done that's kind of interesting. Like, oh, he has like an obsession with like skinning people's faces.
Yeah, and it like, because they had a point where it's like, oh, I don't want to skin your face because your face looks pretty good. Like it's like one of those things where it's kind of like, oh, like there should be a thing where like a running joke, even in the dialogue, being like, yeah, he could have just been like, oh, Harley, you ruined your beautiful like complexion with your tattoos or something like that. It's like little small things like that make the thing more believable,
Or even like, like Harley pisses him off, he punches her in the face and been like, oh, now why did you have to go and make me angry and ruin that pretty face of yours? That seems
it's like
like
that Botox cost me $10,000, like.
No, well, we're on Harley. Well, anyway, the point is,
I'm just saying, like, as a joke, you could have been like, oh, that's going to cost me like $5,000,
yeah.
or,
But,
something
and,
like
and
that.
that's what I'm saying. It's one of those. I think like if they kind of leaned into more of the characters, or maybe just came up with different versions of the characters, it would have been far more interesting. Like it would have been more interesting if they did have. I think at the moment, like there is a Harley Quinn Birds of Prey crossover comic that they're doing, which is supposed to kind of like lampoon this particular movie in terms of a crossover. It'll be interesting to see what it's like, because it's like all the characters from the movie are in the comic as well. And it is kind of out of place, because it's like, yeah, why would any of these people interact with Harley Quinn? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it was all kind of shoved in the end. But like,
whereas something like a Gotham City Sirens, I could definitely imagine that being something much better and much in line with what Harley would do, which is, well, she would try to like kind of like, again, the definitive kind of Harley is the Harley animated TV show, which is getting a second season, by the way. That's coming out relatively soon. Like that is the pinnacle of what a Harley Quinn like maybe movie would be about, or a show would be about. It would be her trying to formulate her own gang and trying to like fight against the other villains in Gotham. Like this film could have been her trying to fight, like it should have been like a comedy version of her trying to fight Black Mask for quote unquote territory after the death of the Joker. But it's her just like making shit up as she goes. Black Mask coming up with all these intricate plans, but all failing, and being like really salty and upset about it. That would have been far more interesting as a film. But like ultimately they went with whatever piece of crap this movie is.
Yeah, pretty much. And I think like what it all really comes down to, it's like I think a lot of it's lackluster because like even like the action scenes were really relatively lackluster. However,
Mhm.
there are a few moments where it's quite good. Because we did report on like they got the John Wick director to kind of come in and do some action scenes, and I think
Mm.
I can clearly spot which sections he's done because I'm like, okay, that looks very
Okay.
John Wicky, and that actually looks pretty good. Like but like
Which scenes, if I may ask?
I think there's one where Harley's in a car. I'm like, okay, I feel like that one's a pretty good one, and I feel like there's certain segments in the when she goes to the police station, where there's hand to hand
Okay.
combat, and I'm just like, okay, that's very kind of John Wick esque. But like,
Mhm.
there's a lot of stuff. Like for example, the whole big set piece is like in like a one take rotating, thing, which I don't think he
Mm.
did because it's like it has the makings of a good action scene. However, it doesn't have the same like kinetic energy.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, there's something about it where I'm like, okay, it doesn't have the same like oof, like I can't believe I just kind of saw that, and I think you can sometimes tell when it's a different action
Oh,
director.
what a shame. Like you'd think there'd be like that whole fight scene would have been interesting, right? Like as in, oh, they're going through the different like kind of I guess like rides in the fun house and fighting all these random dudes, but it's such a boring fight.
Yeah, they do a little bit, but it's not too much. Like okay, rotating platforms that are raised up, like
Trip platforms you can jump on, like yeah, yeah, I don't know.
either way, it's like this could have been something better. I think that's what it is. It's wasted potential. It's kind of like as it's kind of like the Suicide Squad movie that came out in 2016. It's kind of like a
Yeah.
wasted potential where it's like you have this great cast of characters, a good concept as well, and you could do a lot more cool, interesting things with it. However, the way the writers and directors went through it is the very simple, very boring way to do things. And I feel like obviously with James Gunn's Suicide Squad, hopefully it does something different with it, and I hope like at some point, like, because that's the thing, so far 2 for 2 Harley Quinn has been in two very poor films.
Hmm.
So I'm hoping that this new Suicide Squad film, she at least gets something, like at least people like, okay, because I almost feel bad for Margot Robbie. It's like, man, you're kind of striking out with this Harley Quinn character, but you're doing a good performance. So it's like there just needs to be someone who understands your character and how you
Well,
interact with other people.
I mean, that's where I'm hoping James Gunn kind of allows for something to be done with the character in the new Suicide Squad movie. I feel like he'll do a good job, like a better job than any of the people who've come before. Mainly because the last two directors, like the director of Harley Quinn and the director of Suicide Squad, they haven't really done either enough films that are good or don't have a history of doing good films. So it's it's one or the other.
Mm.
Whereas James Gunn, at least, even if like look, and I'm saying this from a point of I actually don't really like the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. I'm not a fan of them. Although one is better than two, significantly so. But it's one of those things that like, okay, at least he knows how to like direct a movie, so I can at least trust that the property will at least be better under his watch versus some no name or some person who only made like a good film, one or two good films. Like who's the guy who did
David
the
Ayer.
first David Ayer? He's done like one or two good.
Like Fury is
Everything
really
else
good. Fury is really
is
good.
Fury. Is Fury the good one that
Fury's
I've
really
heard?
good, and I think he wrote a few good scripts, but I think he did one called Street Kings with Keanu Reeves, and I think that one's pretty alright.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, and
Uh,
the director of Birds of Prey, I forgot her name, but I think she's only really
she
done
hasn't done
like
enough.
she's
She's
like
only done one
basically
film.
this and like something else basically.
Yeah, that's why I don't really want to say like, okay, well, she's a bad director. It's like I haven't watched her first film, and two,
And
she's quite new.
yeah,
So like,
it's one of those things where it's like when you're brand new, you don't really have, and that's the thing. It could just also be a studio thing as well, and how studios do things. Because it's like it happened the same thing with the Chronicle director Josh Trank, who made Chronicle from his own kind of
mhm.
concept. I think Chronicle is a pretty good, solid film. And then yeah, he basically got forced to direct kind of like Fantastic Four, and obviously he just from having a minuscule budget of like $2 million to like literally like 100 million, I think it just broke him. So I think the jump between really small director to big director is so huge for a lot of them.
Yeah, and at the same time, like a lot of these directors are kind of picked because they're cheaper than like big name directors like James Gunn, etc. Because well, these are kind of new name directors. They're going to be making these films much cheaper than if we got, like, I don't know, the Russo brothers, right? Which, you'd probably get a better Suicide Squad film done by the Russo brothers than James Gunn, but they're kind of busy. I don't know. Maybe they're doing another Marvel film. Who knows?
Maybe they're doing a Star Wars film.
Maybe they're doing a Star Wars film. Who knows? But like, yeah, like, look, ultimately, this is a wash, and I guess we'll just have to wait for Wonder Woman. I think is the next film coming out,
if
right?
that doesn't get delayed by the crisis, which
Yeah.
Which I guess the real
will.
question is, it's in May. Do you think it's going to be delayed? Because even like Black Widow got delayed until May. So the real question is May enough?
Yeah. Look, I think so. That's my personal predictions, like based on like what I know about stuff. But like, again, I think the problem with the crisis is that there is like obviously a fear of like people becoming like reinfected again, and so like like with the like certain other kind of crises in the past, there is a problem of people like getting infected, and then like maybe like there being like a second wave of infections, and that will happen when people think like, oh well, quarantine's over, let's go back to our lives. But then there might be like the one person in society that then reintroduces it to everybody else that hasn't been infected, and that causes like a problem in our health system. The whole thing about what's happening now in like around the world is we're trying to stem the spread of this particular crisis that's happening, and by kind of lowering the instances of people getting contracting the crisis, it kind of allows for people's like the medical communities and like hospitals to cope with patients that come in, rather than having like 100,000 people get infected and need to go to the hospital. At least it's like 10,000 a month. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
everybody's not strained. So yeah, there is a potential that like, okay, yeah, to April it might go into May. I'm definitely not saying like again, I think the probably the most important thing that everybody should do is stock up. Don't go crazy, because I think like in most places around the world, you can buy goods, and there is enough toilet paper to go around. But the point is to like, okay, have everything that you need, just in case there needs to be a longer time that like there might be a lockdown. But other than that, like I think once things kind of come to pass, everything has only kind of been delayed by like one cycle. Like for example, I think Wonder Woman's been pushed. Sorry, not Wonder Woman. Black Widow's been pushed, and so every other movie has been pushed down one
It's
in their
basically like a
release cycle.
season, like more or less like a season, or like two or so months.
Yeah, exactly. So it's one of those things where, yeah, if it gets delayed more, then like, yeah, it'll just be delayed to like the next release cycle, and then obviously that's going to be really bad for all these entertainment, outlets. But I think there's more things to worry about than just just those movies not being able to
not only that, but it's
release.
probably also a money thing. They're probably just like, yeah, more money
It
this
is.
way. So yeah, they're playing the long game with this one. But
Yeah, and again, it's smart to just do like a wait and see. It's not like, they need to, like, again, worst comes to worst. I think like what I was mentioning with like the what is it, with like the that Trolls movie that's coming out. Like they did like a digital release. Like maybe there might be an instance where they're like, hey, like watch this movie for the price of a movie ticket, like on your screen, or on your Netflix or something, right? But you pay $20. Like the thing is, like the return won't be as big, but it would be an interesting experiment that they could do, right? Because the problem with paying only like $20 is that, well, people will ask, well, why are you charging me $20? And doesn't that mean you could have just released this movie on digital from the get go, right?
Well, that's the thing. Most films are, pretty much all films are filmed digitally anyway. So technically, all these films could have been, released digitally. But that's a different discussion for another time.
Yeah, exactly. So I think like ultimately, like, yeah, there a there is like a potential move that they can make where they might release everything online if they don't want to wait around and wait for like a theatrical release. But I think ultimately, I think they're more likely to hold off and just release a movie later, because as much as maybe there might be a profit loss in 2020, that's going to happen regardless, and they can just toss it up to blame it on the coronavirus crisis. Damn it.
Don't worry, guys. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. It didn't happen.
It didn't happen. I didn't say the full.
No, yeah, it didn't happen. Anyways, nicely said. Yeah, that's gonna be us for this week. You can always listen to us on Spotify, iTunes, Libsyn, and we stream live on YouTube. Marketing reviews. So until next time, Henry Cavill, Superman can save us from this crisis. But until next time, see you guys.
Gotcha.